It's not started yet.
Well, it says it has on my end,
There it goes. I see a loading bar.
and now we're going to hear all of this as well.
It's okay. So yeah, we're jerry rigging the setup a bit this week, folks. Fern is not here. So,
Again.
yep. So we're here with another episode of No Excuses on BTWProductions.com with your favorite show hosts are still.
And Volosel, who is wondering if it is legit streaming. You never actually told me. Like, can you hear anything?
I think so.
Okay.
Yep, I can hear stuff. So it looks like it's working.
Alright.
I've got it paused. I'll have to open it up, check it again. So if you're worried about it, you'll have to tell me in real time because I'll have to open it up again.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so as has become abundantly obvious from our fumbling about, we have no Fern this week. He's around. He's around, but he's being visited by an invasion, as he terms it, of family, and therefore is unable to do recording. Maybe he'll show up later if he can, throw them off the trail for long enough, but we can't count on that. So, in the meantime, I'm attempting to broadcast. As usual, I'm broadcasting Fate Extella because, unlike Fern, I don't have a jillion random indie games that I know how to play. And furthermore, I'm still desperately waiting for Extella Link to come out. But yeah, so we're here to bring you the latest news and commentary on the video games industry for the week, such as it was, which wasn't really a very interesting or busy one, but you can't have everything. So, we'll do that, but first of all, if you would like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in our Discord server, most easily accessed by going to vtwproductions.com and clicking on the No Excuses logo on any of our recent show posts, which should take you directly to our Discord server, where you can talk with us, like by voice or by text chat or by posting silly memes, however you want, anytime. Okay.
Yes, and you can this post.
You're cutting out again because
Dang it.
you weren't cutting out before the show, but of course now that the show has started.
Yeah. So yes, we're here. We can't start with Fern's week, so this may be a short show, but every time I say that, we go off on a tangent. So start with your week, guest of all.
My week. What did I do during my week? My week. It wasn't a very interesting week, I suppose, but they seldom are. I was mainly so exhausted after work that I didn't do very much. And the main reason for that is chicken. Chicken. Lots and lots of chicken. I'm talking literally hundreds of kilos of chicken going through the lab every day. My goodness, I can't even stand to look at chicken anymore. It's repulsive to me. Not even kidding. Cannot handle it.
Chicken?
Chicken.
Oh, dear.
My goodness. So. I can't do this. I can't even think about it. It just makes me cringe too hard. But yeah, it's the big New Zealand chicken company has apparently decided to send us stuff in bulk, and it seems like they do this every year around this time. They just drown you in chicken. And it's pretty rough going. But yeah, that occupied a painful amount of my thoughts over the course of the week that was, because chicken everywhere. As far as gaming went, in between chickens, I completed the Halloween event in FGO, the rerun of last year's event, which was, quite easy because it was pitched for people who didn't quite have the sort of advanced stable of servants that a lot of people do these days. And I've got to say, it probably would have been a lot harder for me, if it had been, say, a couple months earlier, before I finally managed to break free of my miserable luck. Now that I've got a decent sort of range of things to choose from, decent options to deal with particular setups and combinations of opponents, things have been a lot easier for me. Like, it's been really actually kind of surprising just the extent to which I was hamstrung before in my choices. I mean, I know, as everybody keeps saying that you don't need high level servants. You can always do it with 3 stars and below. Yes, I know it's true.
You don't need, but each attempt takes AP, and there is a certain amount of luck involved in this game, no matter how good your servants are.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you could get the lower level your servants and the lower quality they are, the more likely you are to just get owned.
well, it's not even just that. That's a strong part of it because of the fact that hit points are low when you've got low level servants. But it's also that if you're using the sort of the wonkier strategies that you will often need to in order to, make good on strategies using low level servants, you're probably going to have to do fact finding attempts to work out exactly what works and what doesn't, how far you can push things, because you're going to be, riding a razor's edge the entire time. If you make one mistake, somebody will get jibbed and your plan will fall apart. I mean, there are people who have devised ways of soloing pretty much everything. Like, nearly every mission has been soloed by somebody using Cuchulainn because his survivability is just so through the roof. But yeah, I'm not really keen on devoting that sort of time to it. I already spend more than enough time on it. But yeah, so I finished the Halloween event. I cleared the shop. I got 5 copies of Halloween Princess CE, which is, I think, probably the more important one to max out amongst the ones that you can get copies of during the event. So I'm pretty much done with that. There's nothing left for me to get from the event. So I've stopped playing the event, and I have moved on to trying to progress the story at long last. My goodness, the whole Camelot chapter, it makes such sport of all the previous chapters in terms of difficulty. It's hard to believe they're even the same game. But I've started making really solid progress in that, thanks in no small part to the basically because I pulled Ilya and Nursery Rhyme during the Ilya event. That's basically made all the difference. Before that, I have no idea how I would have managed to do it, because there's so many assassins early on in the story that you have to fight, and it's not easy at all. And if I was limited to Medea for offensive servants, Medea, who, while a very useful servant to have with a very useful noble phantasm, her damage is... yeah. She hits a single target for damage roughly equivalent to what you would expect from an AoE servant, so it's not cool. But the story has been entertaining. It's got the same sort of, Type Moon characteristic, where it tends to whiplash between, like, comedy pratfalls and, really, really grim, dark stuff that makes the world very clearly not a very nice place to be. It's more of the same, but generally better. Like, I feel like the caliber of the writing has just generally gone up across the board. It's still not great because the stories are always kind of janky, but it's essentially like there's it's almost an upper limit on how good the writing can be in a Fate story, because it's essentially like mega crossover fanfiction, no matter which way you slice it. Like that is what Fate is. It's mega crossover fanfiction, and there's no getting away from that. It's always going to be dubious in terms of the general, like, the internal consistency that you can accomplish has to account for so many ridiculous things that it's just a bit difficult to do. But generally I've been enjoying it. The story is a lot darker now. There's a lot more at stake. And the fights have been quite satisfying to beat, because now they've introduced, like, additional challenges and that I mentioned before. But I came up against Mordred. I gather you fight Mordred, I think, 3 times during the course of this singularity. I've done the first 2, and it was rough. Taking Clarent to the face every time the turn ends, like, there's a shelf life on how long you can keep doing that. It is not fun at all, even if your team is loaded for bear with the very best that you've got. And even the trash mobs are rough. Like, there is the sort of pseudo servant knights that that the Holy City has out after you. Like, these are trash mobs that have 100,000, often more, hit points. They're a cut above. You've got to bring your A team to kill the guards. So, yeah, it's been a real challenge, and apparently, according to the stuff I've read online, when they brought Camelot out in Japan, it was controversial to say the least, because people had gotten used to the difficulty level as it was, and it really, a lot of people just could not handle the change, the shift. It was not what they were accustomed to at all. It's hard to describe just what size the change was, because I assumed that, you know, every chapter was harder than the previous one, and I assumed, and it's easy to assume that each successive one will be that much harder than the previous one, just like on a line like that. But you sort of, at the beginning of Camelot, you sort of hit a cliff face, and I think that that's because the sort of mundane play style where you just throw as much power as you have available at your enemy works up until the end of America. And I think largely it works during America because the final boss is a berserker. So all you have to do is beat him down before he beats you down. But in Camelot that's not so. You've got all extra effects applied to things like Mordred, where Mordred fully charges her Noble Phantasm every turn. So you have to find a way to either stave off or take on the chin a Noble Phantasm every turn. And there's other things like Gawain is basically a monster, an virtually undefeatable monster so long as the sun is up. And that, much like in Fate Extra, they're going to have to find a storyline solution to that. But then there's other ones, like there's a special condition for Tristan, there's a special condition for Lancelot, and so on and so forth. I was surprised at how much of a complete douchebag they've made Tristan. Like, he's a sociopath par excellence. in this, well, I did not realise that it was going to be, he was going to be quite so evil as he is. But yeah, he's big on murdering civilians, I guess. Yeah, pretty dark. But I've been enjoying the story. I've been enjoying progressing the story. I never realised that Cursed Arm Hassan, because you see Cursed Arm Hassan a lot in the Heaven's Feel route of Fate Stay Night, and he's just basically a force of assassination. Like, there's not really much more to him than that. But when you actually get to sort of sit down and have a chat with the guy, like you do in Grand Order, he's actually kind of a bro. Like, he's easily the friendliest of the Hassans, aside from the slightly overly friendly Serenity. And it's sort of interesting getting to see the character come out on some of these bit players from the setting that never really got much screen time in the past. But yeah, there's not going to be much time, I don't think, until the next event hits, which is sort of... I kind of wish that they would let us have some time, because there's a lot that I want to do. I want to get through Camelot. I want to at least finish Camelot before the movies come out. Like, I'm really looking forward to that, actually, because there's a lot of dramatic stuff happens in the Camelot chapter that it would be so much better if you got to see it animated. Basically, there's limitations with what you can do with a mobile game. There's not really any way of getting around that. I just wish that I could see some of these fights done in a really lavish way, and we'll get that opportunity when the movie comes out. So, as I've mentioned before, the Camelot chapter is being done as, I think, a duology of movies. So it's going to get a really thorough treatment that way. It was already done as a stage play, because apparently that's a thing in Japan. They make stage plays for everything. Like, they do. There's like 4 stage plays for Bleach. There's like, they recently did a really big fancy stage play for Naruto. Pretty much every property gets one.
What's his face? The Nier guy. He loves sticking random important canonical information into stage plays.
It doesn't surprise me somehow. But
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the Camelot anime. I was sort of holding out this vain hope that the Babylonia chapter, which most people predict is aimed to be released on the 31st of December. Most people are predicting that, and I was sort of hoping that I'd be able to do that chapter before the anime series for it comes out, because it's apparently also another really exciting chapter. But a lot of people are saying that there's almost like the same sort of difficulty leap again after Camelot, as Camelot was after E Pluribus Unum, which is scary to think about, actually. I don't really know how I'm going to get through that, but apparently there's certain, like, there are special condition bosses that can only be hurt by certain things, like very specific certain things too, like a particular list of servants who aren't, I think that there's one that's like servants that are not good or evil or something like that, they are neutral. Like, because all of that, all the stuff that you see in their profiles actually matters. It's just sort of hard to tell when it does. And if you do, I think, Emir's interlude, you actually learn a little bit about how it works. But all of those little modifiers interplay with each other. And there's actually a secondary rock, paper, scissors as well, based on Earth servants, sky servants, and star servants. I don't remember precisely how it works because its effect is like only 10% as large as the conventional one, or less as the conventional rock, paper, scissors, but it is there. And all of those other conditions about enemy types and that are also taken into account by the game mechanics. It's just that the core rock, paper, scissors for servant type tends to be more powerful in pretty much every situation, so you can usually safely ignore a lot of that corollary stuff. But oh my goodness, I'm getting my butt whipped because I'm not paying attention. But there's lots of special condition fights in Babylonia as well, and apparently there's a few servants that are really, really good for it. Apparently Nero Bride is one of them, because Nero Bride has this as one of the servants that has a sort of a fake type, so to speak, by which I mean I think her character alignment is like lawful bride or something like that, or chaotic bride or something, rather than having a moral alignment. And there are a few like that, and that's the sort of like this is the outcome when canonically the alignment of a servant is whatever that servant proclaims themselves to be, which is why Gilgamesh is chaotic good. But yeah, so I just got killed. Great. Looking forward to next chapter as well. But yeah, so the other stuff I did is I tried to push through to the end of Shining Resonance. I really did. And I got like ridiculously cock blocked. I was very, 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 very frustrated, because while it hadn't really happened at any point in the game before, they decided that I would have to use the 2 servants that I did not level up at all to do a compulsory event. So the event requires you to fight mostly level 60 to 70 mobs, and my dudes are like level 30 or 40. And so now I've got an enormous amount of grinding to do to get through it, because there's no... You can't outplay it, because the effect of level is too high, because the bulk of what drives your stats is just purely what level you have relative to your opponent, pretty much. Like, because so many of your stats are just driven by leveling up. You can modify your stats a little bit by adding various accessories and stuff, but it's just trivial compared to being the right level. And that's sort of like this is sort of like the problem that I've had with the game as a whole, has been that there's a lot of good points to it, but what I always find is that it's undermined by its sheer mechanics. Like design decisions are just iffy across the board. I don't know why. They just made a whole bunch of like, I hesitate to call them mistakes because they're not really mistakes in the conventional sense. They're more just sort of, well, you know, if I was designing this game 20 years ago, that would have been okay. But now it's an obstruction. Like no EXP leak when you know you're going to be shifting the party composition. Like you can't do that anymore. I'm sorry. If people aren't willing to accept it, I'm not willing to accept it. I'm not willing to accept that suddenly I have to go and grind up these characters. Now, it turns out there is a way to get EXP leak after I did some research, but you have to know about it, pretty much, and have farmed extensively very specific monsters to get the stuff to make EXP leak accessories. And you need to do it once for every character that isn't in your party. So it's 3 if you're playing in the standard mode like I am, and 5 if you're playing in the refrain mode, which I intended to play, but I probably will never get round to now. But yeah, it's really super frustrating. And in order to feasibly farm up those, you need to farm up another item which allows you to steal on attack, because it will take forever to get it as a drop. You need to be stealing as well. So yeah, the game basically gets in your way. And I hate that. Like, I was willing to tolerate it years ago, like when Final Fantasy 7 and 8 were the main thing, and you got forced to change to random groups all the time, and occasionally the party would split and you'd have to use both. Like, there was not really EXP leak, but because it shifted constantly throughout the game, like which ones you were using, until you got to, you know how every Final Fantasy has that part of the game where you're free. Up until that point, you were forced to change characters so often that everybody leveled up whether you wanted them to or not. And there were EXP up skills that you could equip from your GFs in 8, for instance, which could allow you to close the gap if somebody fell behind or whatever. This game, though, Shining Resonance, goes out of its way to not bother to force you to keep things in sync with each other, and furthermore, to block your ability to level them up quickly. So if I take my 2 low level guys that I need into a area with a dragon, right, and I kill the dragon, and the dragon will give my level 60 dudes will get 1050 EXP, and my level 30 dudes will get like 1100 or 1200.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, oh, well, you've hit the cap of minus X levels, therefore you can't get more XP than that.
Yeah, most single-player RPGs tend to avoid the level cap, EXP reduction, the stuff like that. Like, most of them, if it's actually a threshold, if you're more with this thing, it's going to give you...
You're cutting out riotously again.
Oh, goodness.
I didn't hear most of that. And since I'm broadcasting, They didn't either.
Yeah, so most single-player RPGs will, if you're a certain number of levels below whatever you're killing, you'll get bonus EXP up to circumvent this problem. That's red bar. That's not good. Pickle.
Yes, Pickle.
Okay. But yeah.
But yeah, this is very much in effect, but it's very ruthless. No, the threshold is not very big. And what's more, that's only like half of the problem. The other half of the problem, which goes with that, is that this game is divided into chapters, and every time you get to a new chapter, it scales all the enemies in the game up to your sort of level range. So there is no place I can go and fight a whole pile of stuff that all dies in one shot, and then they'll keep getting EXP from that because, oh well, I mean, if my limit in overlevel enemy is, say, 10 levels for bonus EXP, then I can just go find stuff that's level 40 to raise level 30 guys. No, I can't do that because there aren't any level 40 monsters left in the game. They've all been scaled up to my level. So no matter which way I slice it, I have to work ridiculously hard in order to actually make any progress on that count. It's very, very, very frustrating. I am deeply, deeply unhappy with how they've done that. Unfortunately, There's not a damn thing I can do about it.
Yeah. the biggest game that shuffles characters all the dang time I remember was Final Fantasy VI. Because it shuffles characters so frequently, everybody just kind of winds up where they're usable. But why they would take party members away from you if they don't give you any tools to catch people up?
Yeah, it's like the thing is, I started off raising them all evenly, but you know, you get to a point where that becomes awkward because you know you've got too many characters to do that with, and whichever ones you're basically ending up having to do a huge amount of grinding. It becomes frustrating. You just like, oh, you know what, I can't be bothered. Let's just let's just pick somebody I like and do that. But yeah, you can't
Pick
do
the
that.
pretty ladies.
Yeah, that's basically what I've been doing. But can't do that no more. But they didn't tell me because I was in sort of like free play mode the entire time. I didn't know that this was going to happen. Ugh. I'm really close to the end of the game too. Like I can smell it. I'm in the second to half chapter, and the chapters aren't that long. Second to last chapter, and the chapter's not that long, and I'm just about there. Like I'm at the end of the second to last chapter too. Like all I got to do is like beat up the dragon, beat up the final boss, whoever he is. Game over. I've cleared it, and I can move on to playing Berseria, which is just tantalizing me from my launch menu on my PlayStation. But now I've got to stop and grind 20 levels. Who would do this? It's very, 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 very frustrating to me, and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, the good news is Berseria has a lot of catch-up mechanics. So
Yeah, I don't
if you
know.
know,
I don't know what they've got against catch-up mechanics. Why can't there be catch-up mechanics? I want catch-up mechanics. But yeah, maybe there's a way, and I just haven't found anybody to tell me about it yet, or whatever. I I don't know. Like I was enjoying the game up until then, and then I found out that I'd screwed myself. Now I don't know what to do. Oh well, these things happen. But they certainly do put a damper on the way I'll remember the experience. I mean, it was never a particularly magnificent game apart from some of its acting to begin with. But now, why did it have to happen this way? Anyway, that's frustrating, especially with Berseria just on the horizon, which, you know, it looks gorgeous. I've only ever heard nice things about it from, like, anybody. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to really have a good go at that. And you know, even though it's sort of like not the in thing to admit, I did kind of enjoy even the bad Tales games. They're they're not that bad.
they're not that bad, but they're
Like bad for a Tales game is just not, it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things compared to, you know, other things that are actually bad. So
Zillia is not bad. It's just incredibly forgettable. Zestiria is bad. Zestiria is about as bad as you can get.
I keep getting tempted to buy it because it's so cheap.
Don't even bother with it. You'll fall asleep playing the game.
Yeah, I know. Like your constant insistence that I oughtn't. Basically all that's kept me from doing it, because it like compared to any other game, it costs like half as much in that series. And like
Berseria retcons basically the whole story anyway.
like there is a reason why it is cheap, is what I'm pulling from this.
Yes.
I've made a very poor decision launching this level because I didn't bring the code cast that I need to survive it. So I'm just going to quit before I humiliate myself further. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing that instead. Basically, I'm looking forward to playing a game that doesn't offend me so much. Like, there's just more polish to those Tales games, which is why I said that this one felt like an unpolished Tales game, like a sloppy one. And that's pretty much how it's executed. It's got better voice acting than most Tales games do, though. But I'm basing that on my experiences with.
You had Asbel,
yeah,
and though to be
Graces
fair,
and
the VA,
Cilia, and they were both bad as far as voice acting went.
to be fair, it's had spotty voice acting pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
The only spotty character in Berseria is Laphicet, and sounds like some girl trying to do a kid that's way too young for her voice range. more than an acting problem.
Friendship, friendship.
Yeah. Yeah.
He likes his friendship. He really does.
He likes his belts, is what he likes.
Oh, the main character in Shining Resonance has a spectacular number of belts.
Like, belts are for holding your britches up, and maybe for holding something else. You don't just slap them on your clothes for reasons.
Don't you, though?
No, you don't. You don't do that at all.
But my belts.
No, you don't need belts.
Everybody needs belts. But yeah, it's... I feel like I'm not playing many video games lately because every time I pick something it sucks me in. Like I spent all of yesterday playing FGO. Like I spent all of yesterday looking at my phone and playing a phone game. And I spent pretty much all the afternoon the day before, all the evening the day before that, raging more or less at my PlayStation for what it has done to me with Shining Resonance. Ugh. I'm looking forward to a game that I can sort of sink my teeth into a bit that doesn't have any kind of stupid trick that is going to undermine my experience. But I don't really have much else to say, I don't think. Oh, yes, I do. I managed to accumulate, for a brief period of time, enough motivation to watch the first episode of the new Sword Art Online. So, how do I go about approaching this, given my historic hostility to the franchise in question? It was a double episode, and it needed to be, because there's way too much ground to cover. The first episode was sort of a scene setter, and the second episode was also a scene setter, and the reason for this is that the new system, well, basically, Kirito's basically, because he's got all of this sort of, like, contacts and, you could call it fame, as a result of his involvement in SAO, he is able to get, you know, part-time work in development of VR systems. So the way that this has gone this time is that he's working on this new system that interfaces with the brain on such a level that he doesn't remember anything that goes on inside while testing. And so you've basically got to set the scene twice, because there's the outside world where Kirito is, and there's the inside world where the alter ego that he plays is. Now, the interesting thing about this is that time passes much more quickly in that inside world, because it's structured in the way that dreaming works. So he basically is... He's starting off as a kid, but it's sort of implied by the way the series is structured by various scenes and like the starting sequence and whatnot, that he's basically going to grow up on that side while under, basically. So what you have done is you have yet again managed to create a successful SAO concept in primary measure by removing Kirito. Like, that really seems to be the solution here.
Yeah, I heard his memory got messed with, but I didn't know exactly how it went.
So basically, they are delving into what is, for some reason, even though this is sort of like, to me it seems like an earth-shattering development in physics that nobody seems to care about. They are delving into the modern... the way science has managed to sort of hit its limits with its ability to solve the mind-body problem, right? Which is the simple fact that the mind does not exist in the body, and everybody knows it at this point. Like, all the people who subscribe to you know, I effing love science on Facebook, like, they're in denial about this, but the reality has shown that materialism is not true, and everybody knows it now. Quantum mechanics has held it for a long time, and it doesn't matter how in denial you are, you can't change reality. So, yeah, that's the thing. Because materialism is not true, we have to deal with a situation where you have got an interface between mind and body, and nobody knows exactly how it works, because the mind doesn't exist in the brain. We know this because the mind doesn't behave in a way that suggests it exists in the brain, that it emerges from the brain. Rather, the brain responds to the mind more than vice versa. There's no evidence in existence that the brain itself has any causal power to make decisions whatsoever. This is all a bit high level, but it's important to what's coming next and the particular concept that they're looking at with the new Sword Art Online, which they completely screw up. They get it wrong by oversimplifying it in a needless manner, but you know, I'm not really surprised. So basically, the idea is like what we theorize about the way the world works is that everything exists prior to matter as matter is subordinate to information about that matter. Basically, what we know from the measurement problem is that everything like matter, like particles, all that stuff, exists as a set of, like, call it quantum information, and doesn't collapse into something definite and observable until it's observed. You've got to look at it first. It doesn't actually exist until that point in a particular sense. So what happens then if you've got to sort out this problem on a neural level is the brain and basically everything else, as far as we can tell, emerges from the information about it. Like there is a level of existence which exists as pure information, and everything that we observe as material is simply an emergent interpretation of our existence as information, as Platonic forms fundamentally. Like as Aristotle said, the soul is the form of the body. I think Aristotle said that, in the sense of the Platonic meaning of the word form. So what we have here is we need a way for data to get into the material world and via the brain. And the current theory on this is microtubules, which are very, 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 very minute structures in the brain that, because they are so minute and so integral, basically they can operate on a quantum level. Meaning that there's a certain amount of... It's basically like they are the surface of the water, so to speak, between the immaterial and material. The Sword Art Online concept is basically that somebody has managed to develop an interface system whereby you can exchange data using microtubules directly between the soul and programming. So it's an interesting concept in the sense that it introduces the concept of, you know, the actual scientific interpretation of the soul, as opposed to the popular one, which is, oh, there's no such thing as a soul. The actual science suggests that there is a soul, but it exists in the information space, and we can't access it using data. And I failed this mission horribly because I wasn't paying attention. So what Sword Art Online does with this idea, though, is they say, oh no, there's tubes in your brain filled with light. So I'm not really sure how they came to that conclusion. I think they probably were trying to springboard off like light wave particle duality or something, but the idea basically being that the technology that Kirito is testing is basically a method of writing data directly into the mind, bypassing the matter of the body entirely, by basically firing fiber optics into microtubules of some kind. Which is a janky idea, but the wall banging part about it is that it doesn't seem to be clearly recognised as obscenely dangerous to directly edit somebody's soul. Like, the most that they get is Asuna frowns about it. So, cutting away from the fantasy world part that occupies the first double episode, setting up the in fantasy world events to the real world. First of all, like with the fantasy side, where they eliminate Kirito by regressing him to being a child and he has to grow up again as somebody other than Kirito, the second one, basically they managed to get around the toxic nature of Kirito by honestly really giving the lion's share of attention to everybody's actual favourite heroine, Shinon, because nobody likes Asuna.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've never met anybody who doesn't think that Shinon is infinitely more appealing than Asuna on every imaginable level. So, yeah, she gets a lot of lines. She is clearly a more reasonable and level-headed person than the other members of the cast. They have a brief action scene in there of them all playing, all of the usual suspects playing Gun Gale Online together, because obviously they figured out that that's the more popular setting. But what seriously, ruthlessly, brutally drags this episode down is that you have to see Kirito and Asuna together being staggeringly cringy. Again. And it's even worse than last time. Like, it's transcended cringy into literally creepy. Like, this particular incarnation of lovey-dovey teenagers is the sort of thing that you would expect from somebody who has never, ever met a real human in a relationship before. Because it is disturbing and bizarre. Like, my goodness, nobody acts like this. Well, I mean, very strange people, maybe they do. Like, mentally unbalanced people, maybe. Basically, I think that their whole relationship is unbelievably cringy, and anytime it's on screen, it completely distorts the tenor of the episode. Like, it is a visible cancer. If you removed, like, Kirito or Asuna, or both for preference, from the story and did it another way, the story would just be better without them. That's the long and short of it. So I think that while I was interested in the episode and the sort of information they cover, the sort of story concept they're going for, because, you know, at the end they go right back to the laughing coffin well, and they use that to set up a major conflict, and I expect Kirito will go into a coma and get plugged into that machine or something for the rest of the season. But all it really served to confirm to me as an entry in the franchise is that Kirito and Asuna make everything worse. Like, straight up. That's just the way it is. It's like a law of the universe. Kirito and Asuna make everything worse, and they make it twice as bad if they're in the same place. Pickle.
I see. Yeah, I hear you. It's SAO and you were on a roll. I don't really have much to say about SAO.
Yeah. Like, I'm just astonished that, like, his writing hasn't improved. Like, his writing is purely a function of how much or how little Kirito and Asuna are in there. Like, the more of them there are, the worse the story gets.
Kirito has this weird thing with him where he seems like he was stuck in the story because the author needed a protagonist, not because he fit the story that the writer was trying to make.
Well, yeah, he doesn't have a personality, really. Like, I can't find it. Like, I don't know what makes Kirito Kirito.
Yeah, it seems like at the time this author had what he thought was a cool world idea, and he needed somebody to stick in it. I see that as long as that's been the focus of his writing the entire way through.
Yeah, I've read the first couple books, but Kirito doesn't have a strong personality. Like, Asuna does, because she was doing things. Like, even though she was in the background of the first SAO, she was doing things at that time. Like, because she moved up through the ranks of an important organization, she built a reputation, she had people under her command, she had responsibilities and goals. Kirito was a solo player and did none of that. He didn't do anything. Like, the only thing he botches up this mission because he tells a lie, and it results in him becoming mentally scarred or whatever. And that's his character arc. That's all, really. And then from here he just goes on to fight everything and win. Great. Like, there's no personality there. And I don't particularly like Asuna as a character, but she does stuff. And then you notice how her character sort of hemorrhages out and dies when they put her in a cage, literally, for an entire season, and she does nothing. And then, you know, her character finally manages to revive itself when she basically has her own arc, the Mother's Rosario arc, where Kirito is a non-entity. Like, Kirito is just toxin to this entire franchise. Why do they keep going back to him?
Yeah, pretty much.
I'll probably keep watching it because I want to see the direction that they go. Honestly, the setting is always on safer ground when it is doing cyberpunk stuff that doesn't involve Kirito, or orthodox fantasy stuff that doesn't involve Kirito. Like, you can do either of those, but you can't do anything that involves Kirito and not have it be cringy. The saving grace of this season is that because Kirito can't remember his life outside when he's inside, and he can't remember his inside life when he's outside, they are essentially two different characters. So inside Kirito, while he will have some of the personality beats that Kirito theoretically has, as I've mentioned, Kirito doesn't have a personality. So basically you're dealing with an entire different person when you're dealing with the fantasy world. So they have a way of writing out the Kirito everybody hates and writing in a Kirito that actually does stuff.
Yeah. It's SAO. I've already given my opinions on most of the arcs already, but
Well,
yeah,
this is a
Kirito's
new
Dum
one,
Dum.
so,
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but yeah, Kirito's Dum Dum.
The standout thing though, as I said, is that it seems like the writer hasn't even cottoned to that yet, which makes me wonder. Maybe Kirito's just actually super popular with everybody, and it's just me that doesn't like him, and you and Fern.
I mean, SAO didn't get its hate steam until the YouTube air quote anime community got together and decided to mass hate on SAO and decided Kirito was the problem. They may have got the problem right, but their reasoning for it is often very wrong. Like, they will straight up say things like, Kirito, I don't even remember what they say, but I'm not going to try to remember now that I think about it. It's probably a bad idea. But, yeah, until that YouTube movement started, at least over here in the West, people loved SAO and thought Kirito was the best thing ever.
He's a twat.
So in Japan, people probably still like him.
Yeah, it could be. It could be the case. Maybe those types of characters are super popular. I mean, most of the light novels in that particular band of, isekai is popular. Let's everybody write an isekai novel. Pretty much every one of them has that same character in some capacity. I think Kirito's the worst probably because he's the most cardboard of them, but yeah, they're all pretty bad generally speaking. Like, I think Kirito has the most reason not to be cardboard and the most cardboardness to him, so I think that the discrepancy there is the strongest. But I'm sorry to anybody who is foolish enough to watch the stream, because I'm trying to recall things, so I'm not actually playing. But yeah, there's this weird part of me that really wants SAO to suddenly become good, and I don't really know why. So that's why I keep watching the damn things. But yeah, I don't know. I hope Shinon gets more screen time because I actually like her. So, I don't think she will though. She's not really involved in this particular storyline that much.
Yeah, she was okay. I really liked Mother's Rosario. All the S of SAO, I do not care. Don't care at all.
There were things that I liked in Mother's Rosario, but I didn't actually like it overall because it struck me as a way of the writer saying, look, Kirito's not the most powerful thing after all. Look, I wrote a character that's more powerful than him and then killed her immediately.
I took it more just as a face value watch than that. I'm just like, oh, that's cute.
Well, so did I when I watched it, but in retrospect, that's what it felt like. In retrospect, it seemed very pointed that, Kirito has no purpose in that story. But he still shows up. And what does he do? He shows up to say, no, there's one person who's better than me.
Who's dead now, by the way.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Like, that was jammed in there, and there's no real reason for it. Like, he fights because he has got a reputation for being the best, and he says that she's better. So that was clearly just about making a statement, and I didn't see why that was in there, because it frankly has nothing to do with what the story is about.
Yeah. I should qualify when I say really like, I mean for SAO. I mean, it was watchable. I might have gone out of my way to watch it if the story was based on something like that. But no, it's not. That is just a one-off arc at the end of the season.
You do your week. I don't want to be mad about SAO anymore. SAO is just there. And I'll watch it anyway because I'm a glutton for punishment.
All right. Sure, we'll run through my week. So I wasn't here last week. Won tickets on a radio show or a radio station call-in thing or Facebook promotion program or something, where she got to go to the little mini park in front of Stone Mountain, which is mostly just kid stuff, and had full access to the mountain. This is the mountain in Georgia with the big, giant 1,000-foot sculpture that everybody cries about all the time. So we went. Have a whole lot of say in the matter. I was just kind of dragged off with the family. She's like, she won 4 tickets. I'm like, but I don't. And they're like, no, no, you're going. I'm like, okay. So I wasn't here last week. I was sitting on top of a mountain.
Did you enjoy yourself?
No, it was boring.
What do you do up there?
There's a little, like, fun for the whole family park at the bottom with, like, a little baby obstacle course that was really easy that my sister wanted to do but didn't want to do alone, so I just kind of walked across it. Like, it was like a rope bridge and stuff, and you had to, like, walk across 2 ropes and stuff. I'm like, okay, this is easy. And just kind of, like, walked across the ropes.
Oh, those things. But aren't they normally, like, 15 meters off the ground?
Yeah, it was a bit higher than that, too. Difficulty went up to, like, 20-ish meters, but you had a harness, and I didn't fall, so... Nobody fell. They weren't that big. The ropes were really thick, so you had a lot of space to stick your foot on them. And it's like, oh, okay. And you could grab the harness to balance yourself, so it's like, oh, this is a joke.
I see.
So I did that, and I sat down and waited for her to finish, and then I climbed. My parents took the lift up to the top of the mountain, and met them, and just kind of sat there at the top of the mountain while they ran around taking pictures. And then we climbed down the mountain and we left. That was it.
I'm feeling a little bit underwhelmed here.
It was welcome to how I felt. I was watching my phone's clock the entire time. Like, it was not fun. I'm here last week and I didn't have a whole lot of say in it. And by a whole lot, I mean I had none. So, the rest of the time, I've been poking at Fate Grand Order a little bit since Vol and Fern play it, and I probably should catch up a little bit. So I poked around at that a little bit. I've almost got a Halloween shop that I could use potentially, and in between that, I've been playing Destiny with somebody else who saw me playing. Was like, "You gotta play Destiny with me." I'm like, "Okay, we don't know each other that well." This dude, no, he's a weird dude. He thinks he's a rock star. But yeah, I've been playing with him, and Destiny 2 has not been my cup of tea very much. I don't really enjoy anything in that game. And I don't really enjoy the PvP either. I could get invested in Destiny 2 PvP. It's really fun going in there, and with all the different exotics are their yellow tier item, what would be legendary in WoW.
Yeah.
So I'll probably accidentally call them legendaries. All their legendary stuff has a unique effect that makes it so whenever you get in there, somebody's got some wonky legend, interesting effect that you have to play around. So it's always different when you go in there. So it makes each game really interesting because you have to figure out how to play against the opposing team's weapons.
Right.
And you have your own you get as you play too, so you can play with those. And due to the fact that people die really quick now, it doesn't really matter which one you have. It's just going to do a different effect. You're still going to die in one. So you game now.
You're cutting out really badly again, by the way.
Yeah, I saw. That was the internet. That wasn't me. Right. That wasn't my mic. So, yeah. But yeah, the problem with Destiny 2 is the loading screens. When you boil down Destiny 2, the biggest problem it has is the loading screens.
Those loading screens are obscenely long. I thought that maybe I would get away because I've got the fancy pants PlayStation, but no, it's still unpalatably slow. And there doesn't really seem to be a good reason for it either. Like it's not like they're loading something incredible.
Yeah, you can access the menu and go into your options and change your gear in the loading screen. It's got this big thing. But the thing is, before your ship takes off to... Hang on, I see a red bar. Okay, I'm green again. I'm scared to talk when I see the bar go to red. I'll explain why my internet's having more problems than normal in a minute. But yeah, you have to go into a loading screen to load into the loading screen that lets you load the next area, but it has a big fancy special animation where you can edit your gear and stuff.
Which also has to load.
Yeah, which also has to load. And also, if you're editing your gear, the next zone loads slower. Which is fun. It's just, the loading screens in that game are too much. You'll often have quests where you're like, oh, I should bump back to Mercury to do a quest real quick. but that means I have to sit through 4 minutes of loading screens. Like, I could bop my way over there and do the quest in 2 minutes, but the fact that there's like 4 to 6 minutes of loading screens in between me and there is like, that's an endeavor. That is now work. Like, queuing up or PvP matches, you're still stuck at 2.5 to 5 minutes of loading.
I thought it might have just been me, but clearly it's not. Like,
no, it's a total pace breaker.
Yeah, there's like, I'm willing to tolerate a certain amount of loads, but like I think that I pretty much cap out at Monster Hunter.
Yeah, Monster Hunter, at least when you get in the world, you're doing a 15-minute activity at minimum usually. Like, when you get to the zone, you're gonna go punch the monster. Like, so the 1.5-minute long loading screen ain't that bad when you got a 15-minute event you're doing. But when we've hit the 5 activity I'm doing can possibly be shorter than the loading screen, we've got a problem.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Like,
I'm familiar with those loading screens, but I hadn't actually thought about what it meant to go through one of those like every time you want to do a PvP activity or something. Because normally when I went into Destiny, I would load up and then I would derp about for half an hour in an area or whatever before moving on to doing something else. So I hadn't actually thought about what it meant to play PvP in a situation where you're actually you're not getting to do very much at all, are you?
Yeah,
you've got to pay the same price and loads for it.
Yeah, and when you get in there, like, you have quests you need to do in the PvP areas too, for some dumb reason. For some reason, they have stuck specific, like, objectives in the PvP area, which is the other reason I couldn't get invested in it. Like, you have to go in there and get, like, 150 kills with a hand cannon, then get 150 solar damage kills, and then get 150 precision headshot kills with a hand cannon, like, back to back to back, which means you're going to have people in there trying to finish this quest in competitive only, by the way, for this specific one, where people are in there in ranked matches using weapons they're terrible with because they got a quest for it. And this happens all the dang time. So what I've done is be a bad person to get around this.
Great.
So what I've done is I have intentionally thrown matches as discreetly as possible by putting the team on my back and carrying them until the very end, and then intentionally missing the shots I take to just a bit to the left of the heads of the dudes I'm shooting at, so that they kill me and it looks like I just lost a firefight, to throw the ranked matches. So that when the match finishes, my competitive rank will not go up. Because 150 kills is a lot when you only have 1 life per round and there's 6 rounds to go through. That's one of the game modes that comes up a lot.
Yeah. I'm finding it a little bit hard to believe that they've made so many design gaffes. Like, I thought that they had fixed pretty much everything when they brought out their big expansion, because everybody said, oh, this is a real return to form. It's not the complete disaster that the previous two were.
Oh, we should talk about Dust of Osiris and fracking whatever the other one was. The Mars thing with the worm.
I don't know what you're talking about, because I refused to drop money on them. They're asking for too much money for what they were giving, so
I was using loading screens as my filler for AP regen, so I went ahead and paid for more loading screens. And the first 2 are definitely paying for more loading screens. That's all they are. Curse of Osiris and whatever the heck the one on Mars is called, the 2 baby X packs, are some of the worst value for your dollar I think I've seen in my life. They are literally just 2... Curse of Osiris is the worst. This is the first X pack. So you dawdle your way through the Destiny 2 main... And you're like, okay, first expansion's up next. It bumps the level cap up to, like, I think 30 or something. Or maybe that was the next one. You go off and you do quests on this new planet. And the only way to progress anything that is not a main story mission or one of the one-time doable side quests is the one public event, singular. The planet is so small, it won't even let you use a speeder.
Oh my.
There is one public event you have to do about 5 times if your daily flashpoint pops up at that to do events on that planet. And this thing takes 15 minutes between respawns. So you're like, Okay,
This
I
is
guess I'll go make a sandwich or something.
this doesn't sound like an expansion. Not really.
No, it
This
wasn't.
this
It
barely
had,
qualifies as DLC.
and what the other thing it added was the Lost Prophecy cubes, where there's 11 purple tier weapons, one step below. They're called legendary for their epics in that game, but I'm going to use WoW terminology. Is you get like there's 11 epic weapons you can get, and to get the materials to make them, you have to go to Brother Douche Canoe, get the prophecy, and then go do anything else other than what's on Mercury that's already in the game to have a chance to get the stuff to drop, depending on what type of event you do. If you do PvP, you get a certain crafting material from that. If you do instances, you get a certain one from that. If you do world quests and public events, you get a certain one from that. And when you get enough of them, you shove them all in the prophecy box and take it back to Brother Douche Canoe on Mercury. And then you do the next one. That's all Curse of Osiris is.
I'm not impressed.
No, it's terrible. It is the worst. Like, if they weren't on sale, I still feel ripped off with buying that stupid X pack at half price when it was bundled with the next one. So, the next one is something better. This X pack is not as bad for me because there's a whole lot of exploration and find stuff in it that's on the planet and does not require you to reload the zone. There's a whole lot of collectibles to go find, and it's all on the planet in the one instance you have to load, which is nice. The planet's big. It's on Mars. But, yeah, the main story apparently hacked off a lot of Destiny lore nerds because those exist somehow. But
People who went to the website and read all the stuff.
yeah. Yeah, the lore dude for Destiny, when I went to his YouTube channel to figure out what the heck was going on, had like 300,000 subs and like 200,000 views of video. So dude's doing pretty good. So apparently a lot of people care about this story.
Or at least, people had to go to YouTube to try and figure out what the story was.
That is also probably part of it. They were probably mostly people like me that were just like, okay, I'm not going to read the website to figure out each little bit from logbook entries. Give me a generalized overview of what's going on first. So I had his videos on in the background for a little bit. And so Mars is just the big attraction on Mars is there is this public event that's constantly ongoing, and the more the people on the planet can do, the better they are. The higher its difficulty level goes up to 7 times. And if you can get to the end, you get some really nice rewards from it, and it spawns a boss at the end of every level of it. But it's just waves of dudes. Like, you fight waves of dudes, you stand waves of dudes, you fight a boss, and if you did it fast enough once, and then you go to the next level. There is no strategy involved in this when it's 6 people out in the open world with other random events and people spawning in. You're just shooting the dudes. They can't make it very complex because it's literally happening on the planet with everybody who's there trying to do other stuff other than that event. So that's the big game. I don't know anything about the raids because I'm not going to go cobble together 6 people to go do 6-player raids in this game. So I'm not going to ever talk about those. I don't know how good they are. I think one was introduced with both of these expansions, but I have no idea how good it was. And the rest of it is just go run around Mars and collect stuff. Find collectibles, do missions, and, more Destiny 2 stuff. Which was better because at least it had stuff to do while solo. You could grind up stuff. You can go out there and get the legendary weapon quests and do them, and they're all soloable this time. And they don't require you to leave the X pack and go do stuff you've already done, at least. They all require you to do stuff on Mars. So, Mars was not as bad, and the end boss of the campaign for that one was actually a real boss. For once. Like, Destiny 2 had a running thing where the boss was the end boss of the main campaign and the previous expansion was just another dude or a bigger dude. In this one, it's actually a big worm boss. This worm is apparently some agent of the nebulous, wonderfully named Darkness because they're good at naming their bad guys.
The Darkness, really?
Yeah, the Traveler's Light fights the Darkness. Ooh, spoopy. So yeah, the worm is an agent of that, and you shoot the worm and it dies. And it has mechanics. You have to not get hit when it's crawling across the platform you're on, and you got to shoot it at its weak point in the mouth. And it has certain attacks you have to hide in certain spots to avoid. It's a real fight. You have to actually, kind of pay attention. You're still not going to miss because its weak point's like as tall as a skyscraper, but it's more than shoot the dude, which is a step up. But yeah, it also is not worth the money. Unless you really like collectible stuff, it's not worth it at all. The next one is Forsaken, which is where they got their kick in the previous 2 expansions had destroyed their PR because of reasons I just mentioned. Nobody was going to buy Forsaken unless it was something that knocks it out of the park. And they seem to have figured out what they need to do. They're on the right track, at least, with this. They put the previous 7-level tiered thing on Mars was called an escalation protocol. They essentially cloned that and stuck it in one area so that it's not a world event. You have to actually bring a group to it and actual mechanics in it. So they did that, and they let you choose your difficulty level from the start instead of having to work your way up to it. And the bosses rotate each week. The rest of it is set on a big open world in this like dreaming city off in the asteroid belt that's like this random city that's stuck in a time loop. But it's this really pretty like big opulent skyscrapers and castles everywhere and big giant cathedral looking buildings. So there's a lot of stuff to run through, and it's a very, very big, so big you can A, use your speeder again finally, and B, you can not have to load anything. This is a big deal. They've made this place so honking big so they can stick the quests all over the place so you don't have to load while you're going through and doing your weekly stuff in it. And instead of just having a generic goal every week's goal rotates on some rotation. We don't know what the rotation is yet. We don't know how many events there are, but at week 6 since the X-Packs come out, they've had 6 whole weeks of new stuff come through this big city. And they usually have like some rift you can find that takes you to a shadow world where you do some wonky challenge. Like this week it was you had to run through a bunch of bridges with 3 really overpowered knights chasing you, and you couldn't kill the knights. You had to find a way to escape them while dodging other enemies to make it to the end and then beat one of the knights. So there was that week. Last week's was the single most obnoxious thing I think I've ever done in a shooter, which was first-person platforming to the max. A 15-minute platforming challenge with rotating platforms in first person.
Why? And get out your sword.
Yeah, well, that doesn't help very much. Because they're black on black, and they rotate very slowly. Like, they're usually rotating counterclockwise, and there's about 3 points you could jump at them and land on them and get to the next rock okay. But then you're at the mercy of whatever the rotation cycle between all the rocks is, because if it doesn't line up right, you may not be able to make it to the next rock. And then you have to get to the end and fight a boss that I was not at the appropriate gear level for at all. And you have a 30-minute timer. I think I finished that solo mission with like 50 seconds left on my timer. Something like that.
See.
And it took me like 10 attempts to do it. It was interesting because it was hard, although I never want to do it again.
Yeah, I remember there being a lot of challenges in Guild Wars 2 that were like that. That were just like, wow, I've done it now. I feel great, but I never ever want to do that again. There were a few like that in Secret World as well. The old Secret World, which was hard as balls.
Yeah. So there's stuff like that, little challenges and special quests you can do that are equally as challenging and interesting throughout the world that rotate each week. Special hidden platforms will appear that as you get close to them, if you have a certain buff on you, you can see, and you can do platforming challenges out in the open world. They don't require you to go through a loading screen. They're just there if you happen to have the buff. And you can hop through them, and if you finish the challenge, there's a treasure chest at the end that has a chance to give you epic loot and stuff like that. And it's a good found. People are only celebrating it because it's way the heck better than whatever the heck Curse of Osiris and the Worm on Mars thing were.
The Worm on Mars.
Yeah, those things were terrible quests. Like, whoever designed those decided they were worth $20 needs to be fired.
Yeah, you're not really encouraging me to drop more coin on this. I have to say.
Now they seem to have realized that. They are bundling the previous 2 X-Packs with Forsaken for all future purchases of Forsaken. And of course, they announced this after I've already spent money on those stupid things.
I see. I mean, I'll be blunt. That was a lot of the reason why I. Well, that's a bit of an overestimation. It was a not an insubstantial part of the reason why I didn't want to drop any coin on the earlier two expansions, was because the only content that would be actually relevant would be in the last one. And if I bought the first two, then I still was another purchase away from being current with the game. It was like back in the day where you had to buy every WoW expansion.
Yeah, so they have made the smart decision and decided to bundle that I can't remember the name of, and Curse with Forsaken. Now, when you buy Forsaken, you do get a boost to skip all the way to level 30, which skips you past the main story, Curse of Osiris, and the Worm on Mars. So they're literally giving out passes to people who buy the expansion to not play that content. Probably because they don't want anybody talking about it anymore.
Well, I mean,
but
like, you don't really want to go through Hellfire Peninsula, do you?
No, you don't. Forsaken is much better. It also comes with, I think, 4 regular 3-man instances and a whole new raid with like 3 different sections to it. So it's got its in-game content there. I only do pug groups for the group content. Yeah, that's the only real group PvE content I do. But yeah, and it actually comes with 2 planets now that I think about it. The Dreaming City is just the in-game thing you do after you've got your character at level cap. But there's another place called the Tangled Shore, which is some mess of wrecked ships in the asteroid belt. And that's the first zone you go to. And you do quests there for one of the wonderfully named Fallen dudes, except he's a big fat one that's so fat he has to use a 4-legged spider-looking chair, and he's called the Spider. And you do quests for him there, and he has different rewards that help you with older content stuff, like Masterwork Cores, which are a pain in the butt to get, and Bungie has apparently said they're making them easier to get, but you need them literally the entire time you're leveling up. Because whenever you get a new weapon, you're going to need 3 of them. Because you need to bump your old equipment up to the current max level, or whatever your current level cap is. Unless you want to carry around every single weapon you own, so that on the off chance you see a piece of gear drop, you can throw on all your best equipment. But you don't want to do that.
I'll be honest, I don't really know what you're talking about.
So the way gear drops work in that game, after you hit level cap, you're at a soft cap of 500 light level, which is the little blue level when you press start above your character's equipment, right? That's the soft cap you're at. The hard cap is 600. To work your way towards that hard cap, you have to gradually get gear while the gear in your inventory is at whatever your current hard cap is. So you'll start at 500. So once you get enough gear that's at gear level 5 or light level 500 or close enough to it, you'll start getting drops that are slightly above 500. And then you'll get drops slightly above that the higher your light level gets, and so on. The problem is, sometimes you get a stupid submachine gun with no range on amounts of whatever ability or something. You just don't want this piece of junk, but it's got a higher light level, which means you need it in your inventory in order to get your gear to keep going up.
This is like when you needed gear score to get into groups.
Yeah, except you need gear store to get the gear to drop that's better at all.
Yeah, who thought that was a good idea?
I don't know. The fix is pretty quick, and if you've been playing through the other content, you have enough Masterwork Cores to get you to a baseline at least. But like right now, I got 5 heavy weapons sitting in my inventory because I gotta just have their score because they're higher than my baseline, and because I got quests for 2 of them.
I didn't realize that number was a mechanic. I thought that it was like just an indicator of your rough level of power, so you don't try and attack something you aren't suited to fighting.
No, your light level determines pretty much everything about the game. That is the single most important number on the stat screen. It determines your damage and your defense. Like, the actual number on any given piece of gear for its light does not matter at all, but your average light level increases your damage by something like 11% per level.
Wait,
once you hit
soft
cap.
Did you have to go to like a wiki to find this stuff out? Because I didn't know any of this crap.
Of course I did. You think the game's smart enough to tell you this junk? No, you got to go to the Reddit or something.
This
Yeah,
hardly
the
seems
wikis.
fair.
It's not. I had to go to the Reddit because the wikis for this game, there's like 7 of them, and they're all terrible because the information's spread out across all of them. It's one of those type of wiki situations
Why
where
does that
this
keep
game is.
happening?
I don't know. Fragmented communities with really popular games. You either get really lucky and there's one wiki that has all the information consolidated in one place, or you get the Destiny effect, where the community gets so split that all the information's across 50 different wikis.
Good grief.
But no, the Reddit's the best place to look this stuff up, and even then, good luck. Their search function's terrible. But yeah, that's how you crank that up. And the other thing is, with Forsaken, they introduced gear scaling. So, up to light level 550, everything you do will scale to your gear level, which is realistic for getting you to the week-to-week grind. Everything will stay at an appropriate level every 10 light levels until then. It'll bump up to your current max average light level after that. But once every subsequent light level will just add more to you and put you above the enemies behind you. So, unfortunately, this gives the weird effect where 50, you don't feel like you're making progress.
Okay, so much of your explanation has been just you cutting out that I really didn't follow any of this. But the take home from it is that they have used an incredibly Byzantine and non-transparent method of determining basically everything about player power and progress.
Basically. And the take home I was getting at before is because it scales with you until power level 550, you don't feel like you're making any progress with it at all until you hit 550, which is 50 light levels above the current soft cap. So you'll get that in about 2 weeks of doing weeklies and dailies. That's where I'm at, and that's probably where I'm stopping. Because I can still go into dungeons and stuff still dies the exact same number of hits. It apparently stops at 550. Point of light after that just adds to your power, and the enemies don't scale up to it.
Maybe it matters in raids.
It does matter in raids, but the raid minimum light cap for the raids is so high it almost doesn't matter, because the highest tier of raid right now requires light level 580 to even go into.
Oh, so the only people that can attempt it are already so overpowered that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, they're farming for the actual gear drops and the passive skills on them. They're not just throwing away old light gear that's like 20 light levels below what they're at.
Right.
Yeah, they're looking for specific drops with specific passives at that point. But yeah. So there is some arcane BS in this game that is really hacking me off, and the loading screens are really bad. That is the take home from this. There is stuff to like in Destiny. If you can deal with the loading screens, if that is a non-factor to you, there is stuff you can enjoy in this game solo with the PvP content and all the exploration solo content and collectathon stuff they keep adding. There's stuff to do there, but you have to wait 5 minutes in between planets.
Okay, so I'll be honest. The entire time that I was playing Destiny, I was pretty much playing during FGO loading screens. So, I mean, if I could just get a system right, that when FGO is loading or charging AP, I play Destiny, and when Destiny is loading, I play FGO, then maybe between 2 games, we'll be right.
Like, I would literally pull up. That's what I was doing, right? Every time I'd get to a Destiny 2 loading screen, I would pick up my iPad and punch through a 30 AP something in the Halloween event, and then do whatever I was doing in Destiny, and then during the next loading screen, pick the iPad back up.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I wonder if we will get to the point, as far as the industry is concerned, where things like that type of usability are able to be determining factors. Like, it's one of the things that the PC Master Race people like to skite about, is that their ability to improve performance, whereas console gamers really can't improve the performance of anything. That said, they don't have to meet minimums either. But yeah, it's I think that like, if you look at graphics, I don't think that we're going to see a major leap in the next console generation? Like, where would you put it, and how would you fund it? Like,
I think
who can see it? We're getting close to hitting the reasonable cap. Like, there's more headroom in VR, but VR's uptake is still spectacularly low. So, but there's a certain amount of sort of usability stuff that encourages people to play things. Like,
loading screens.
I'm perfectly happy to play games where I can zip around without having to wait all the time. Like, that's part of what gave WoW such legs. Probably not just for me either. That there were so few loading screens. You can just go where you want and nothing gets in your way.
Yeah, it's a pacing and flow thing. If you get in the zone playing a game, you don't want that broken by a 5-minute loading screen.
Yeah, basically, the game shouldn't get in the way of you playing the game. That's the take-home message with that. And I hope that we get to the point where developers start to see that as a priority. Once there's no headroom for you to one-up your competitors based purely on something like graphics, maybe then we'll start to see a change in the wind where people say, oh, well, our game is more fun to play because you don't get interfered with all the time.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope there's lots of rumors about the new console generations and what they're doing in the PS5 and stuff coming out, but the biggest thing I want is just less loading screens. That's been a problem that's getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, like
things like
I duck into new games now and again because the idea of having enough money to buy a new game is still alien to me, so I don't even think about it most of the time. Like, I just don't buy new games. But that's the reason, like, you guys all jumped into Spider-Man, I didn't touch it. The main reason I didn't touch it is it never occurred to me that I was able to. Because for so many years I had no money. Now, the result of that is that I have come into the AAA space sporadically, and I have to say that even though I was willing to put up with a lot because it was a fantastic experience, I was shocked at the loads in Monster Hunter. Absolutely shocked. I didn't realise that was the state of things.
Yeah. Monster Hunter, like, in the last little bit that I've noticed, has just been really bad about its loading screens. That's what really woke me up to it, was Monster Hunter. Spider-Man's are pretty bad, but it's got a big open world you run around in and you loading screens at all. The quantity of loading screens in Spider-Man is quite low, but they are really long. But Destiny 2, I think, is the pinnacle of the loading screen problem.
Yeah.
Where I could be, done with a PvP match in the time it takes for it to match me up and find one and load one. So you're having the active playtime of your player base if that's their preferred activity. You could almost do a whole round of Gambit, which I'm not going to bother talking too much about. It's just together. Yeah. I usability issues. People are trying weird things to make their UIs different or hybridize them between PC and console, and there's a whole lot of weird stuff going on with that. Destiny 2 is also a good example of them going, like, with the cursor like, that's lovely game. Why can't I just move to where I want?
Yeah, I found that very confusing and very unintuitive. In fact, that's probably the biggest broad criticism that I would probably level at Destiny from what I played of it, Destiny 2, is most of the game is unintuitive. Like, other than the part where you point guns at things and shoot them and they die, the systems on which the game operates all seem unnatural and don't make sense. And that's really the core of the whole experience, is that things don't make sense. Like, none of the game systems make sense. You don't know, like, I don't know if this is like a product of everything was explained in Destiny 1, so they felt they didn't need to explain anything in Destiny 2.
It was probably even worse in Destiny 1. Destiny and Bungie had problems making Destiny and Destiny 2. It's very well documented that the leadership of the company, the developers were all at each other's throats. It was not a pretty game to make. We know there were problems. We know this game had its issues for very clear reasons. If everybody in the company hates each other, you're not going to make a really intuitive product when you're not willing to share ideas with each other.
Yeah, That doesn't really surprise me. Like the number of times that when Fern and I played most of what we played together. Fern's played much further than I have, but we played most of what we played together, and the number of times one of us stopped the other one and said, "Wait, so how do I go forward?" was pretty ridiculous. Like, a lot of the time we just didn't know what we were supposed to do, or it would tell us something and we wouldn't know what it meant. Like, it was quite ridiculous.
Yeah, Destiny 2 has a time period. Most games have a time period of, if they've got some kind of MMO element, there's a do stuff time until you figure out what you're doing. In Destiny 2, that's a pretty huge, almost 6 hours, I would say, before you really get a handle on what the heck you're supposed to do. That's how long it took me to figure out, oh, these are side quests, these are public events, this is the main story, this is the order things go in. It took a good 6 hours of just messing with stuff to figure that out. Your other option is go to the Reddit and try and search for stuff, but good luck.
Yeah, I do wonder if there's some extent to which developers are using the existence of wikis and Reddits to just avoid bothering to explain anything.
Yeah. It's lack of information has been a thing. In Monster Hunter, people are defending it as though it's part of the game, and just finding stuff out like that and mathing it out yourself is part of the fun or something.
Well, that's always been that way for Monster Hunter, from what I hear, is that they never explained anything, and you did have to pretty much find everything yourself.
Yeah, and Dark Souls people give a very similar argument for those games, and Destiny 2 doesn't have a pedigree for doing that. They had the weird lore system where you had to find lore in the game to unlock a trophy that unlocked a page on a website you could view. So I don't know what they were thinking. But yeah, they just don't have information in the game that they should.
Yeah, I think that somehow I feel like Destiny 2 is worse because ultimately in Monster Hunter, what you need to know to advance is still how to fight monsters. Like, generally speaking, if you can mechanically play well, you'll be able to advance in Monster Hunter no matter what. If you're really good, you could use a really weak weapon and kill the final boss. Like, you just could, because you're good enough. But in the case of Destiny, everything is about systems stacked on top of and within systems, like a Matryoshka doll. Like, every system contains another system, and all of them are undocumented by the game. So you end up with this situation where it doesn't matter how good you are at shooting people in the head, because that's not what advances you through the game. It's the way you stack gear in your inventory that advances you through the game. Like, in what world does that make sense? Who sits down with a video game and thinks, okay, so I need to load my inventory up with the right gear, with the right levels that I'm not using in order to advance?
Yeah, like, I got a 551 handgun that's my highest primary weapon slot item, just chilling in my inventory, and I'm still using my rifle because it's a higher light level. Like, that handgun fires off into left field every time I shoot it. So I'm just sitting there with this thing in my inventory that I have no use for other than to boost the light level. But yeah, just the first time you load up Destiny and you get... And hang on, I'm in red bar. It's got to go back to green before I finish this. There we go. But the first time you land in the erectile dysfunction zone, like, you're going to get there, and there's 5 billion icons on your map. There is a bunch of stats you don't know because you just got introduced to the game, and you don't have a clue what any of it means. The guy at the top of the church is all you know about, and he's right in front of you. You go talk to him, he's like, go do this. You do that thing, and more junk opens this function zone. And there's a whole other section of the zone that just has nothing in it for you right now that you won't get to till the end of the main story. Like, what are you going to do with something like that if the game doesn't explain it to you? Most games would do the sensible thing. And Destiny 2 kind of... This is a lost sector. This is a quest. But then there are other types of quests it doesn't tell you about. what does the little sword mean? It means side quest, but the game ain't gonna tell you that. You got to do enough of them to figure that out. What does the little blue flag mean? That means main quest. You got to do it to figure it out, though.
Yeah, I actually didn't do side quests for the longest time because I didn't know what they were for. Like, I didn't know what they were, so I was just like, the game's told me to do them yet, so I guess I'll just leave them for the time being. I can come back to them later. I mean, I could come back to them later, that was fine, but the reason I was skipping them was because I didn't know what they were, not because I didn't want to do them.
Yeah, and then as you're going around the game, you're shooting dudes. Oh, phase neural cores up. This little orange cube thing. What do I need this for? Oh, it turns out you need all of them at in-game, by the way, so don't go just hand them to the rep guy.
I already did that because I handed a bunch of stuff to the rep guy that I asked Fern, do you know what this is for? And Fern's like, oh, I don't know. I haven't seen what it's for. I think you can just turn them in for rep. So I turned in a bunch of stuff for rep. Later on, I found out that they had a use.
Yeah, they have a very important use in upgrading your gear. You need that junk to upgrade your gear to the current light level you're at.
How was I supposed to know that?
I don't know. I didn't figure it out till I ran into a wall where I didn't have enough of what I needed either. Like, this seems to be the way most people figure that out. Is because, oh, wait, I need how much phase glass to get this thing caught up to the current light level? Oh, that useless piece of gear that guy gives me when I rank up is not worth it at all. Like, you need that stuff for later in the game. And because you're going to be off planet, guess what? You're not going to be back to that planet very much to get more of it. Unless you go through and do enough bounties to get the bounty trophy like I did, because I'm an idiot. It was exploration, Chivas. I couldn't help myself.
I see. Well, at any rate, as far as Destiny 2 goes, if Forsaken does do a bundle deal so that I don't have to buy 3 pieces of additional content in order to have the game as it stands in the present day, then maybe I will regard more kindly going back and playing a bit more of it. But
yeah,
as it stood, like, I hit max level and I'm like, I don't like that my level's not going up anymore. I'll just pick up the expansion. And they're like, what do you mean I need to pay 3 times in order to have the game at the level that it currently is? No.
Yeah.
I was not willing to accept it.
Furthermore, each planet has a soft light cap that you cannot exceed. So each subsequent planet will have gear you'll have to go grab before you can move on.
Right.
But if you're just blitzing through the story, you'll get that gear. So, but yeah, I'm accentuating the negative in Destiny because there's a lot of it that you need to know about if you plan on jumping into that game. It's not small stuff. It's a whole lot of big stuff you really should know about.
And the primary thing you need to know about is that there's a Reddit.
Yeah, go to Destiny the Game Reddit. And just dig through there. It's not organized. They don't have a good wiki index in it. They don't have any kind of index from what I saw for basic information. You have to go to the search bar. It might be there. It's a really badly designed Reddit. But you'll have to get there and dig around to find stuff. Source of information I found. So good luck if you plan on getting... I think I'll be playing it much longer. Was asking me to play has kind of stopped his buggering. Unless some of my friends on Discord suddenly start playing it. They're like, hey, you need to get on and play. I'm like, okay, I guess I can get on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't think it's very likely. Like, I even when I was playing it, it was a case of, oh, this is something to do where I can switch my brain off. And I don't need to worry too much about the fine-grained detail. Only it turns out now that there was way more fine-grained detail than I had ever expected.
Yeah. Funny that when I started listening to Dune, I finally got around to it. I was in the map Dune. So I'm like, oh, right, I was going to listen to that. And I've got a whole slew of that's not as good as people actually say, but it's not terrible either to talk about later. But because we've gone on long enough with it. And I want to save it for when Fern gets back, because when I told him about it, he's like, oh, I need to read that too. And he got the audiobook too, so he's listening to it.
Well, it's supposed to be you know,
one of the must read.
Part of the geek orthodoxy is to have read Dune. But
yeah, it's one of the must reads for people our age.
But
that list is pretty dang long, so it takes a while to get to everything.
Like there are far
like there's a whole lot of must read, much watches for people our age. Well, Dune is one of them. So I finally got around to it. And I finished the first book, which was a 20-hour audiobook, which,
Well, Dune is a doorstopper, so
yeah, it is. But yeah, I got through the whole thing, and I'll give you a bit of foreshadowing. That author can say a whole lot of words without describing a whole lot of stuff in his world.
yeah, there are things that I would rather read than I've never stuck much by the geek orthodoxy in terms of things like my reading list contains things that I rank higher than that. Like I want to read Analects, I want to read Romance of the Three Kingdoms. There's a lot of other stuff that you know I would rather read than Dune because
Yeah.
Dune is just one of those things that is quoted by everybody, but it's just as far
Yeah.
as I can tell, its main cachet seems to just be that it's old, like that it's archetypal. It's like Lord of the Rings for sci-fi. So
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. The only reason I picked it up is because you are like an 11 on the Fate fan scale. They're like an 8 or 9 on the Dune fan scale. And they talk about the book all the diddly dang time. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, the only two male friends I have in real life left anymore that I can actually get out of their house are sitting there talking about this book I haven't read all the dang time. So I figured I should finally sit through it.
I don't think I'll ever get around to it. There's too much other stuff to do.
Fern has a
I'm not that interested. I heard it was a really bad movie though.
Hang on, I'm still in red bar. That lag spike I hit when I ran into you is still going. I don't know if I'm still running into you.
Nor do I, because I can't hear what you
Oh.
hear. I don't. I'm sort of grimly impressed at the way the internet appears to know when we're broadcasting. There doesn't seem to be any reason why.
Machines have at least a limited level of sentience. They are out to get you.
Machines.
And whatever is in charge. They are alive. Each of them has a different personality, too. So, I think that's it for the weeks. I'll save the Dune stuff for when Fern about it. He's like, oh, we can suffer together. And he went and bought it because he drives all the time, so he's got plenty of time for that stuff.
Yeah. I don't have that sort of luxury, and I don't really want to, really, to be honest.
I have to audiobook at the same time. Oh, goodness. My internet's having an absolute hernia, so I'm going to have to go kick it in the face, I think.
Is that anything to do with your storm lately, I wonder?
Give with a bit of silence. Holy crap. Pickle.
Pickle?
Okay. I'm lagging like a boss. Like, I need to go kick the router. It's lagging so bad.
We'll take a break then. I don't know how to do that exactly.
I was about to say the live show on YouTube may be 5 minutes of just white noise for a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Well, we can have Fern edit the audio file since we get 90% of our 99.9 repeating percent of our listeners through iTunes anyway. So, we'll be right back, I guess. Holy guacamole, this is bad. I need to And we're back. And since everybody listens to us on iTunes, it shouldn't be that bad, but the video stream of this will be a little wonky with just white noise there for about 3 minutes. So there is that. Yeah, so we have an email that y'all apparently missed last week while I wasn't here.
Yeah, I just forgot to check the email box. So, sorry, Serathis.
I can't be missing emails, man. I have to beg them to get us to send some to get like the 1 or 2 we get from like Missy No and Serathis, because they're the only ones that love us. So, I'm trying to load it. It's taking a while though. Do you have it up?
No, I don't have it up. Because I am providing entertainment of a sort.
Alright. Okay, it's loaded. I will attempt to read through this, but stuttery internet and my inability to read and talk at the same time may get in the way. We'll see. This will be an adventure. Okay. So, this is from Serathis. It says, Dear No Excuses, so it has come to this. Telltale Games closes down. Good riddance. You guys murdered Point and Click and ended Sam and Max. You might figure out that I like Sam and Max when you look at the avatar I pretty much use everywhere. Or that I have seasons 1 and 2. I think you're missing a word there. Or that I have seasons 1 and 2 twice because the GOG versions have the soundtrack. Oh, you own. Okay, I gotcha. The only place where you can get the soundtrack legally. But apparently, making 10 episodes of Minecraft Story Mode was more important. So that's that. No more Walking Dead. We won't see how Tales from the Borderlands ends up despite ending on a huge sequel hook. No Wolf Among Us despite ending on what tried to be a huge sequel hook. No more... I'm not crying for you. I can't see that word. My mic's in the way. Argentina? What's Argentina?
Argentina's a country. So there's a song, Don't Cry For Me, Argentina.
Oh, okay.
From
I get the reference now. Okay. I did not get the reference at all. Also, thanks for inspiring Life is Tumblr. Thanks a lot. You're very sarcastic this week, Serathis, I think. I can feel it.
Well, Sam and Max is very precious to him, and Telltale messed with it. Like, I'm not really surprised.
Yeah. Thanks, Telltale. Thanks a lot. Especially since the game is getting a sequel. Not the other entry is... Oh, goodness. Not that... I think that's supposed to be it. Not that the other entry in the supernatural female coming-of-age story is similar. Okay, I'm not sure what that sentence means, Serathis. Yeah, I don't get it. Anyway. Oxenfree puts a bunch of greater than signs. Life is Tumblr. I don't know what Oxenfree is. So that's probably why the last sentence didn't make sense. Okay. In other news, I finally finished the Fractured Butthole. It is a good game, but at no point did I feel that alt-tabbing to prawn would be less awkward and easier to explain than what was actually on the screen. I had this feeling multiple times during Stick of Truth, so yeah, it did not hit as hard as I believed it would. Also, somehow the multiple seasons worth of stuff from the show happened when in game it's literally tomorrow. That's a bit weird. That's I don't remember the butthole game. We'll talk about it in a minute. Just get through the email. But in the email on a higher note, Crosscode finally released, and it's pretty great actually. The mouse keyboard controls are a bit hard to get used to, but the gameplay is nice. There is surprisingly a lot of parkour going around, and you have the Metroidvania-esque thing where you find tons of stuff you can't access just yet. I guess that's what the cool kids are doing these days. It also looks pretty if you don't mind the 16-bit pixel art, which is also what the cool kids are doing these days when you are indie. Okay. Except if you're a Team Cherry, because then you make a pretty hand-painted 2D video game and release 3 free content patches. Yes, they do. No way I'm going to do the part where you have to finish like 50 boss fights back-to-back to get the ending. I just watched it on YouTube. These guys should make animated shorts. Yes, they should. Also, WoW is flatlining because of fundamentally flawed content design. Island expeditions and Warfronts are mere AP farm. I think that's WoW stuff. I expected a lot more from these super hype features. Legion managed to make these things awesome with an exclamation point. Did it? Really? Why did Blizzard disband that team and got these guys to work on WoW is anyone's guess. Maybe when we get BFA's version of Serathis. Okay, well, there's a reason I don't read the emails, and that's why.
It's because you almost swallowed your tongue in the process.
Yes. The language part of my brain can only do one thing at a time. It can read, it can listen, or it can talk. It can be pretty good at whichever one it chooses to do, but it can't do multiple.
Right. Well, anyway, what do you want to tackle first?
Okay, hang on. I refreshed the email to get it back to a decent size because I had to make it itty bitty so that I could follow one line at a time. Come on, you can do it. I believe in you. So, he starts off with Telltale. We talked about this 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to it other than, you know. Are you seriously surprised that the only thing that they were interested in pushing was freaking Minecraft? Like, kids are still nuts about Minecraft for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I don't pretend to get it. It's a thing that I bought it because Fern posted something on the VTW forums and said a bunch of us are getting together to try this thing out because it's popular. And played it for like a couple months, blew up a mountain, and that was the end.
I can only assume that it's just like modern kids Lego or something. Like,
yeah, I played with Legos a lot as kids. Everybody I knew played with Legos.
pretty sure
It was like
everybody played with Legos, so that, except, you know, the ones that schools bought that were always not quite Legos. But
oh yeah. Oh, what was it? Me, when I was younger, we had two twin girls that lived next door to us, and on our other side, we had this other younger kid, and he was somewhere about 2 years younger than I was, and his parents bought him those not quite Legos. So when all three of our houses piled our Legos together, we didn't know his Legos were the not quite Legos, so they wouldn't quite snap together with regular Legos. So we had to go through and manually pick out every single Lego from his Lego bunch from our big collection we were making.
I see.
But yeah.
But yeah,
When we were kids, we used to have to play with Legos and go to people's houses.
well, everybody's afraid that if you let the kids out of your sight, then they'll be like attacked by a legion of pedophiles or fall into a deep dark hole and disappear or something. I don't know. I guess kids aren't allowed to do anything anymore.
But yeah.
But I guess if you aren't allowed to do anything anymore and you want to meet up and play with your friends, you have to do it in Minecraft. Because obviously there's going to be no perverts on the internet, right? Internet's perfectly safe.
Well, Minecraft also looks like it's kid-friendly, and parents know what it is because it's popular. So you could probably, if you're a young kid and you want to play with your friends, you're like, there's this popular game that our parents will definitely say we can have. So there's a good chance your friends play it. I guess that's where the logic comes from.
I have no idea. But, yeah, but at any rate, with Minecraft being the phenomenon that it was, it's sort of hard to be surprised that Telltale gave it a disproportionate amount of importance because it was what was the hip thing.
Yeah, the problem is its player base is like 12 at most for its average player base.
I think that the problem is even more fundamental than that. I think the problem is that people who like Minecraft play Minecraft, not Telltale's Minecraft.
Yeah, it's like trying to make a story with Legos. Like, nobody wants to watch your version of what you did with your Legos. They want to play with their own Legos. They want to blow up their own Mount shenanigans.
Yeah, I think that really is it. That, you know, people might like to make their own thing with Legos, or they might like to build to a plan with Legos. But what they don't want to do is watch somebody else play. That's not how playing works. Like, I know that we live in the streaming era, and lots of people watch lots of people play video games, but that's you know, an inherently social activity in a way that the sort of gaming,
oh goodness, like
in a way that the Telltale games are not in any way social. The Telltale games are just somebody telling you a story, except in this case they're telling you a story about what they did with their Legos.
Yeah, and I don't think the age thing is insignificant in this either. Like, the average age of the Minecraft player is young. Young players don't have long attention spans, which means they can't sit through a 10-hour story.
Yeah, I think that's too much of an ask. Like, their target demo ended up being like man children or something. Hipsters.
Yeah, I don't know who they were shooting for with it. It seems to miss the mark in a whole lot of ways. So yeah, the butthole game.
the Butthole game. I haven't played either of those. Like, I've sort of vaguely meant to, but never really had much motivation because I don't really get South Park jokes, having not been a South Park watcher.
Yeah, I was a casual South Park watcher, like once in a blue moon when I still watched the actual TV, like TV. So a long time ago, I'd watch an episode, or a big episode happened that everybody was talking about. I'd watch it just to get caught in the conversations.
Yeah.
But I was never into South Park.
Yeah, I've never really been fundamentally a huge fan of sort of purely Vulgarian humor. So
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of shot content like that either. It's a thing that exists and people like it, and it's a franchise people like. And I get it. I get why people would like it. I played the Butthole game, and the thing I remember about the Butthole game is there was a whole lot of nasty stuff in it that all has gotten washed over because, after 30 years, you just kind of, that stuff just happens. It's like, oh, I've been exposed to all this already, and you're super desensitized to it. It's like, oh, there was a bunch of nasty stuff, and I managed to break the combat system. That's all I remember about the game.
well, the from what I've heard, pretty much everybody breaks the combat system.
Yeah, like, it's not hard. Just pick the speedster. There's probably other ways to break it too, but yeah, the game's easy to break. So it's just, vulgarity by itself is not a way to get stuck in my memory anymore. I'm so desensitized to it because I grew up in the internet. Like, it's not going to stick in my mind anymore. I cannot remember anything about my experience with the game. I can't tell you what the story was about. I can't tell you any single scene in that game. It's just completely gone in one ear and out the other. Yeah, I can't remember anything. I'm actually trying to remember anything about the Butthole game, and I can't remember anything other than it was crass. And the system was pretty bad.
You might, the only thing you can remember is that it was crass. That's like the only thing I can remember is that it was a South Park game about South Park. Like, that's not, you're not revealing very much there.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, the next thing he talks about is Crosscode. I played Crosscode. It wasn't finished when I played it, so I didn't finish it. I didn't even finish what they had. And said, I'll eventually get back to it maybe when it gets finished. So I might get back to it maybe now that it's finished. And yes, Team Cherry is amazing. I've sung Hollow Knight's praises since I first picked up the game on a whim. So, yeah. Ugh. We need Fern.
Yeah, it's really hard without Fern, man.
Yeah, I can't.
This happens every time. There's a reason that we have 3 of us and not 2 of us.
The very first thing when this show popped in my head, that even while absolutely wasted that night, was, we need a third person. That was the first thing I think I said. So, and this is why. Oh dear.
It's hard to, like, I honestly feel like 2 people is actually harder than solo. Because you're having a conversation, but there are natural gaps in conversation. If you are doing a solo show, you can just work to a plan. If you're doing a trio show, you can fill in for each other's gaps. So,
yeah, and you have 3 different sources to go on tangents with, and you can take breaks. You can take a breath and get your thoughts in order. With 2 people, you got to keep the conversation tone going with just 2 people.
Yeah, but
and sometimes. And it's also a higher chance both of you won't have anything to say and you don't have a third person to pick up the slack. Okay. Let's see here.
What else in the email?
That's all the email. So thank you for the email, Sarah.
WoW in there, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah, there was. But I tune out WoW whenever I see it on instinct now.
Because it's dangerous.
Like, it's not so much dangerous. The people that try to get me to play WoW are dangerous. But, yeah, it's there, and I've just learned to ignore it. Just to kill any temptation to maybe poke at it again.
Yeah, but I've heard mixed reports on their attempts to resolve their issues, of which there seem to be many. And I've heard everything from they've come up with this miraculous, great new innovation, which is making everything great, and the new systems are now great, and the new activities for people to do are now great. So everything is now just absolutely marvelous, and we don't need to worry anymore about the future of WoW. There have also been people who have said they've made all these changes, so I appreciate that they're trying to rectify things, but these changes don't make sense and they're not accomplishing what they need to accomplish in order to save the game's future. So, yeah, I don't really know where WoW is at and where it's going. I think that BlizzCon will matter a lot because the confidence in the game is not high. I've heard diverse reports on the game's performance qua active playing, in terms of like, well, I mean, are there lots of people playing it? Is the subscription rate declining? Like, you've got to infer all these things now. You can't find out for sure, but some people have said that the game has leveled off. Some saying that it's still growing. Some saying that it's actually basically a disaster at the moment. But what is unambiguous is that the influential portion of the population, I think that this is something in the era of YouTube we have to distinguish. There are two types of vocal player base. There's the vocal player base who are on the forums, and then there's the vocal player base who everybody worships their opinions on YouTube. That seems to be a separate class of people on YouTube or on Twitch or whatever. Now, people follow these people. People hang on their every word, and it's really weird and creepy, but they do it, and so we've got to take it into account. But I think that their confidence amongst that group in the game is not very high, and they are the tastemakers for a lot of people. So
yeah,
they really need to just to win back that respect, and all of those people, because it's their quote unquote job, they will all be watching BlizzCon like hawks for whatever information they can find. So they really, I think it's going to be really important to them, because they need to regain that confidence that was lost when they fundamentally ended up making a game that, you know, didn't excite anybody. And I think that's really the problem. No, there was nothing exciting because of the banality that Serathis mentioned in a lot of the things like their Warfronts and that. Like, I've heard people say Warfronts are better now, but I've also heard the contrary. I think that they need to regain the lost confidence. That's the immediate necessary objective. People need to stop writing WoW off the way that they're starting to. So that's very much what I'm seeing as an outside observer, is that even if they're still playing, most people who are still playing seem to be more or less going through the motions and not really playing. They aren't doing an entertainment activity because they find it fun. They are just playing it because they're waiting to see what will happen if they keep playing it.
Yeah.
And that's not a healthy place for the game to be in, because that is, at this point, burnout is at maximum. You've got a grind system in place, nobody's excited, they're just on the treadmill because they're on the treadmill. Like, at that point, you know, it's just, you're in the danger phase of losing your entire player base at that point. I mean, the only people that seem to be very stable right now are the PvPers, and it's because PvP is sort of an evergreen activity in that sense, because, you know, players are supplying the content then, essentially. And so long as the game isn't like totally broken in favor of one comp that wrecks every other one, you can usually, you know, log on and do some matches with your buddies, and it will work, give or take.
Yeah, and this has been a thing I noticed with WoW for a while, and this is what really is a big wall I erect in my brain to keep myself from even thinking about it, is there's nothing really to work towards in WoW outside of raiding. Like, if I want to do PvE content, it used to be in Vanilla and Burning Crusade, there was always stuff to experiment with because the information was not readily available. That's not the case anymore. Yeah, information's out there, and everybody knows every little thing about the game. All you got to do is go to a website and min-max yourself. Yeah. So there's nothing, you can't do that anymore. A bunch of the old content is slowly getting removed, replaced, or whatever, or you eventually accrue it over time. There's no reason to go back to old raids and do them anymore. No challenges you can set for yourself to go back and do an old raids anymore. Can't work for that. Okay, so what are you left with for PvE content if you can't make challenges for yourself or experiment to find new ways to do things? Dailies. and raiding.
Why would you say that?
And what is dailies but just content you don't want to do? Let's be real. Nobody likes doing dailies. Nobody. Not a single person that plays that game. I guarantee you, if they say they like doing dailies, they like doing something on a schedule. They like regularity. They like having something consistent in their life. They don't like the dailies themselves. The dailies themselves have always been bad and boring.
Yeah, I never liked dailies. I did like having something to keep my hands occupied while I listened to the news or to a podcast or whatever. But
yeah,
I can't imagine actually liking dailies. Like,
and
there is nobody in this world who appreciates the input of a giant Kaleri bird. I'm sorry, no. The giant Kaleri birds are evil. Nobody likes contending with them. There is no way that is fun. Ogrilla Simon Says? Does anybody like doing Simon Says?
Yeah. Do you like flying around a big asteroid field, killing the same dudes and throwing that Looterang? Like, you will literally invent games for your brain to do with the dailies, like the Looterang thing or whatever. When you smack the orcs in the Nether and your Netherdrake quest,
the game was
you're trying to
how many boots you could get trailing through the air after you and bring them back to Shattrath.
That's what I was getting at. You will invent games for yourself to do to get engaged in what you're doing. The dailies are so boring. And raiding is on a schedule. It's something that chunks your life because you can't do it spontaneously with your friends, and it's a time commitment. Because of its nature as a commitment, you feel like it's an obligation. And that's a problem, because then it stops being fun very quickly if you're not making rapid progress and really enjoy the people you're with. This is just, WoW gets really sick when it hits that point. And playing WoW is not nearly as fun. And I don't get why people sit through it every time. Like, this is the reason I could have kept going when I was at Legion. There was stuff still to do, but right at the end of where I was at, I saw in about 2 more weeks, I was out of stuff, and it was dailies and raiding. And I liked the people I was playing with at the time then, but I knew for a fact if I kept going for more than 2 or 3 more weeks, somebody was going to tick me off and I wasn't going to like it anymore.
Yeah, I think that the real marker, I think, that, and this is not something I'm sure of because it's sort of an idea that needs refinement and toying with. I feel like if you've got an MMO and you can't explore, that MMO is on a clock, it's going to die. And World of Warcraft has staved off that clock purely by adding more content, more territory to explore. But it's still dying slowly by degrees because you can't explore.
Yeah. The real big hump they first had to get over, and still I don't think have gotten all the way over, is exploration of mechanics is not a thing anymore. It's not possible in the current age of information when it's distributed as well as it is. You do not have to spreadsheet anything out yourself anymore. You don't have to go out and experiment with Shield, Slam, and Revenge to figure out which generates more threat, what does more damage. You're not doing that anymore. Organic exploration of mechanics is not there. It's not an aspect of the game you can leverage. Somebody will have a spreadsheet up on Reddit that's optimal in 5 minutes after the X-Pack comes out. Every single time.
And you can't not use it. Because if you don't, you'll be behind.
Yeah. Because that information's so available, everything will be scaled to that. Whatever that min-max turns out to be.
Yeah, it's like how they kept... When they were ardently opposing the idea of WoW Classic, one of their core arguments was that everybody knows too much about the game. The game as it was during vanilla won't work, and there's a lot of merit to that argument.
Yeah, absolutely. The exploration of mechanics was a big for people that did not play vanilla WoW in a way where it was meaningful at in-game. If you went with your current knowledge right now back to it and took your guild with you, you could 20-man most of the content. Because you know what to do with your class. You know how to optimize your rotation. This was stuff that you did not know back then. You had to go on really janky websites that probably had a virus in the Flash program that ran at the side to figure out what optimal stuff was if you were lucky. And that was not available every single patch. And this went all the way through Burning Crusade. And at Wrath of the Lich King, it spiked and the information was just there when Elitist Jerks became public. Before then, you had to figure it out yourself. And this is where a lot of enjoyment came from, I think, for a lot of people, and they just don't remember it because it was just an instinctive thing to do, was to explore the mechanics and figure out stuff that works.
Yeah, I remember when we were raiding AQ, like, we would have we'd have one of the members of the guild reading the strats as we did them, and occasionally we would just get completely wrecked because, oh, I guess they didn't record that ability in the wiki article, so yeah. We'll now have to deal with that on top of the stuff that's actually listed on this page.
Yeah, boss fight video's not a thing. You were lucky to find the mage doing it that didn't explain anything that was going on, that was just standing there spamming fireball. You might find a video like that, if you were lucky. Like, the information just wasn't there. The organic discovery of mechanics and content in the game isn't there anymore. Everybody knows what's there the second the patch comes out. So you can't rely on that to keep your game alive anymore. And I don't have the answer for WoW on how they bring that sense of discovery back. I am not that person to ask when information gets that prevalent.
Yeah, I don't know whether or not it can be done. It might be able to be done. I'm not going to write it off just yet, because I'd be really happy if they did find a way to bring back that sense of, you know, you're the one plumbing the depths of the unknown here. It's not just the guy who's the best at spreadsheeting.
Yeah, and it would be a different story if we were talking at new players to the game. There's lots of stuff they can figure out as they play. There's a lot of stuff they don't know. But for us experienced players that know what the core game is like, there's nothing there. We know what's going to be there. The new environments will look pretty, but that's all they're going to be. And on top of that, we also have to write off WoW's story. It's gone so far off the rails and re-retconned itself, it's essentially not related at all to what we originally thought it was back in the days when it was just coming out of Warcraft 3.
People seem to think that it's super good now or something. Like there's good stuff waiting.
They say that every X-Pack, though.
Yeah, I'm not really sure when we're going to see all this great stuff that is always threatening to come out but never does. But yeah, I do think though that as far as the lore goes, they're at a pivotal time. Like, because they're at this time where they're almost out of antagonists. Like, we're going to see Azshara this time because she's already a character this time. We're going to see N'Zoth. We're going to see well, it's already been found that we're going to see the, what's it called, Xal'atath or whatever it's called, the blade that Shadow Priests used in Legion is going to become a character because it's going to get freed from the blade. But those are the only real pre-established antagonists, unless they're going to legit go full retard and turn Sylvanas into an antagonist.
It seems like something they would get desperate enough to do fairly easily.
Yeah, I don't think it will go down well for them if they do, because they already did that once with a character that, you know, nobody really liked, being Garrosh. Although it's been sort of funny the amount of sort of retrospective Garrosh did nothing wrong, because yeah, people have hated so much of where the story has gone since that they kind of miss him. But I think it'll be interesting to see where they go when they run out of basically previous existing lore to strip mine for content. But I think that the game is still on a clock. Like, even though the numbers have remained relatively consistent throughout, I feel like every time a new expansion is announced, the excitement for it is attenuated a little bit. Like, each time it's like, you know, there's just a little bit less excited than last time, and that seems to be the case time and again, and it's by degrees, but eventually there won't be any excitement left. And when there isn't any excitement left, then they're not going to get the hype train buffing up their subscription numbers again.
Yeah, and even then, those numbers are beyond suspect. Like, yeah. I wouldn't believe those numbers if you had the marketing department come and tell me that these are totally true to my face. I would laugh at them. There's no way those numbers are true if you ask me. I think for sure they are losing people, because there are more avenues to get on a treadmill now. You can play Fate Grand Order if you want now. You can play any of the other popular mobile games if you want now. They are so proliferant with the amount of treadmill games that are out on the iTunes store now. everybody's got an avenue that they can get on to do something with regularity if they want. They don't need WoW for it anymore. And that's just the aspect of WoW that they seem to really keep people going with. That and character investment, because they've been playing for 12 years, but there's not a whole lot people can do about that, either Blizzard or the players.
Yeah, well, at any rate, what it seems to me like is that they're in a phase of live by the hype, die by the hype. They have to get the hype back. If the hype doesn't come back, it's over. And that's why I think BlizzCon's going to be important this time. Because hype is at an all-time low. The numbers, in terms of active playership, not necessarily at an all-time low, because it was really, really bad back then during Warlords of Draenor, when it had been 13 months and there'd been no content. Or whatever it was. That's a long time with no content. But now we're at this stage where there is new content and people don't care anymore. That's really dangerous.
They drop the ball a little harder than they normally do. Not much harder, but a little harder than they normally do at the beginning of this X Pack with the gearing system. And yeah, I think that really bit them at a time they didn't need to get bit. So we'll see what they do. I don't know. I say I block out WoW whenever I see stuff about it. It's when I think about it in retrospect that I get worried, because somebody could still tell me that they're playing WoW, and if I know them well enough and they ask enough and hard enough and they push hard enough, I could be dragged back to it still, despite not touching the thing for 2 years.
Yeah, I think that I could probably be sucked in pretty easily by the promise of some new killer feature that was like genuinely sounded interesting and new.
Yeah.
Provided that it wasn't, a blatant, obvious treadmill, like that I was just going to get stuck on with no visible progress for like forever. Because I think I've almost hit my limit of those. But
yeah, it's just
like if I was playing WoW right now, I would actually be making less progress on a day-to-day basis than I do in FGO. So that is sort of it's a hard sell.
Yeah, there's just if WoW could find a way for you to make meaningful progress towards various goals that you choose to pursue on your own that are not repetitive, or you are working towards thresholds to do something that was appropriate for you, as a player, that would be something that could keep me going on it if I decided to play again. But they don't have anything like that.
Well, I think that for the people that are willing to tolerate it, for most people that's Chivos.
Yeah, and Chivos are fine and nice and all, but they don't give you anything. They're just a goal. Getting one Chivo doesn't lead into another Chivo.
Well, they do sometimes, and sometimes
it's just get stuff. And there's plenty of games with better collectible systems. And WoW is so daunting to complete it that the idea of 100%ing it, even for people that like completing stuff, is just not feasible. And that's a big roadblock for when they do when Chivas are used as incentive. It's like, I could go for it, but I can't finish it. It cannot be done.
Yeah, the scope is too broad at this point. But I mean, the broadness of the scope was once upon a time an advantage back when there weren't any formal Chivos.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you give them something. I think they were trying something like that to get people to work towards something with the artifact system. And I think tying it to something that integral to every piece of content was the wrong way to go about it. I think the grindy nature of it and the mandatory nature of it also made it a problem. It needs to be a choice to go for something. It needs to be meaningful, but it needs to not impact every single facet of the game.
Yeah, from what I've heard, that nature has been carried through into the new Azerite system, but it's not as important to keep grinding. It just looks like it is. So you end up basically the players have to lean on their own self-control to tell themselves that it's not as important as it looks in order to not get burned out by it. Because it isn't. Yeah. It isn't as important as it looks anymore because of how cancerous it was to the game. Like, there was a huge amount of burnout took place around Nighthold, I think, after Nighthold had been out a while, because people had just been grinding so furiously and it was too much for them. And I think that they're trying to avoid that, so they made the grind is just less impactful, and the catch up is pretty easy. Like if you wait 1 week, it will be dramatically reduced. Like it's like half or something, or there's a dramatic reduction anyway. If you just allow yourself to get behind, then you'll level up much quicker each time, because of the decay in the requirements to grind over time. So unless you're at the bleeding edge, there's really no strong incentive to do it. But the fact is that you can, and it would still be a finite measurable advantage. So
Yeah.
it ends up basically tossing the ball back to the player base. Oh, well, if you want this, if you want to not grind, you have to be able to convince yourself that you don't need to. And if you're involved in actual clearing content or something, then that's not really an option.
Yeah. The only real solution that I have that would solve the problem involves a very, very thick design document that reworks a whole lot of stuff and dehomogenizes a whole lot of things. And that's just not feasible for a design team the way it's set up right now.
Homogeneity is something that, like, that was back in the old days, and Blue Please and that, and Octal and Hordak. Back in the old days, homogeneity was the boogeyman. And
Yeah,
now it's just so thoroughgoing and old hat that we don't even talk about it anymore, when it's still just as pernicious as it ever was.
I think honestly it's the root of a lot of these issues. Where if you were willing to segregate more aspects of the game and diversify the ways players can play, I think you could make a whole lot more people remain invested if you allowed them to pursue whatever they want and play however they want, instead of just saying, okay, hunters are exactly the same as warlocks effectively, just go have fun. They are doing the exact same content. They are going to, just do DPS, and they're going to have a pet and do stuff. There's nothing creative you can do with either class that the other can't do. Classes are super homogenized. You have the content. Everybody does the same raids and PvE content. Nobody's got a class that's specialized in doing any type of other content.
They've oscillated about that point. Never very strongly, though. But, like, for instance, nowadays Demonology Warlocks are absolutely not like their Hunter counterparts at all, because they just simply function in a different way, generally speaking. They've developed that core idea over time to the point where it's no longer a carbon copy, because when they went to homogenize, they overdid it. The thing is that they just haven't been brave enough to do anything radical, because they know it'll upset the apple cart. The radical changes that they have made are things like gutting out Metamorphosis to send warlocks to a different sort of what are they calling them? Class fantasy.
But your favorite word? I think it's still in your Discord thing when I click on your name.
Yeah.
PhD in class fantasy.
Yeah, because I was ranting about the way they kept doing things a lot in the name of class fantasy that didn't make any sense. But it did show a sort of willing, after a fashion, that they didn't want things to be the way they were, that they knew that there was something wrong with homogeneity, but it was so comfortable that they didn't really know how to move away from it.
Yeah.
Like they moved away from it by baby steps, but that's not enough to fix the issues that they were having.
Yeah, you don't need to move the apple cart at this point, I think. You don't need to tip it. You don't need to flip it over. You need to blow it up.
Yeah, so the problem is not where the apple cart is, it's the apple cart.
Yeah.
It's like you're still using a cart. Like, we invented internal combustion a long time ago.
Yeah, like, the problem is, the apple cart is here. We called that homogeny was going to be a problem forever ago. Everybody that listened to Octal and Hordak and Blue Please at the time probably still agrees as well. We knew it was going to be a problem, and this is the result of it being a problem. Yeah, there is no individuality in players.
Well, the thing is that it's expanded beyond that now. That's the real pernicious part, is it's expanded beyond that, and content has been homogenized as well, which is why this time the content all looks exactly the same as in Legion, because that's the real reason people are blasé about this expansion, is that it's Legion 0.5. Like in terms of what you can do in the game, it's just, there's Legion plus a couple bits bolted on. So if what people have to look forward to in the next expansion after whatever this current expansion's called, Battle for Azeroth or whatever. Like, if what people have to look forward to again is more world quests, more dailies, more of the same, nobody's going to look forward. Like, well, I've already got that, and I've been playing it for 2 straight expansions now. What do you want from me?
Yeah, like, take the archaeology system and make some kind of exploration mechanic that builds off of that as a base. Send people actually exploring the world for people that like to find hidden stuff. Make some kind of mechanic similar to pet battles. Pet battles were a good direction to go. You have a unique segregated part of the game that a lot of people enjoy and like to progress in, that they can make progress in, that does not impact other parts of the game. Use that as a base to do other similar stuff. Like, give them a way to progress at a pace where they can constantly keep progressing if they choose. Don't gate it by days, and let them go and do it. And give them avenues to pursue to express their individuality as players. Let them choose what they want to do and make that part of who they are in the game. Don't make everybody just daily bots.
Well, it's not even just that though. Like I said, we've got this ultra curated, ultra directed, ultra controlled and regulated story experience now. Everything ends up going the same way ultimately. Like you've got this. You are forced to be a particular person in a role-playing game where you're supposed to have your own avatar. Like, that's the problem as far as the story is concerned. Like I was talking about, I think I was talking about it while you weren't here, or was it? Well, at any rate, I talked about it, I think, a bit last week, in that the way things currently stand in Battle for Azeroth, you are forced to simultaneously aid Saurfang's possible coup for the leadership of the Horde, while simultaneously aiding Sylvanas in committing her heinous acts or raising her army or whatever. So you're basically playing both sides, and either you've got to come up with some internal justification for that for you as a player, as a character in the world, or you just have to write yourself off as a point of view camera.
Yeah.
Because what say your character, as you envisage your character, is super loyal to the Banshee Queen, why would you then go and aid Saurfang in committing a coup? And let's say your character is super opposed to Sylvanas for all her war crimes, why are you then helping her to, raise the corpses of all the Night Elves she slaughtered en masse in order to increase the size of the Forsaken's army? Like, you're forced to do both of these things. Because you're always forced to do exactly what the story requires now.
WoW's already had the problem where you kind of feel like just Jeff, the NPC named with a J name, who just happens to be the guy that does everything in the background.
Well,
that never gets talked about in the lore.
I think that would be better. If you were just the guy that's in the background, it would be better. Because that way you weren't, you weren't a mover and shaker who just happens to be present at every event playing every side simultaneously, because that's incoherent. Like, you did general tasks to advance the war effort back in the day, but you weren't a spectator to the great happenings done by other people all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot where I was going with that. But now, Jeff, you are Jeff the whatever I was going with that. But now you're playing both sides. There's something called a conflict of interest, and even Jeff the NPC usually doesn't have a blatant conflict of interest as bad as I play both sides of the army because reasons. I don't get it. A lot of their design decisions nowadays, especially in regards to the story, I tend not to think about very much because it just seems like they want you to be even less than Jeff.
Yeah,
POV camera is a good point.
Yeah, you're just there to watch other people do things. That's fundamentally what you're there for. That's the way it seems to be now.
But yeah. I liked it better when we were Jeff the NPC.
Yeah, because it made sense that not everybody can be a hero. Like, there are some games where being a hero is necessary because they're that type of role-playing game. But in the case of World of Warcraft, like, you already have heroes in that setting. The people who are really important are already there. They already do stuff.
Yeah.
You don't need to add an extra person who is also the hero because you've got heroes. But you still do things that are important. to fulfill your role as a member of the Horde or the Alliance to do stuff. But now you're not. If you're helping Saurfang, you're not being a member of the Horde proper. If you're helping Sylvanas, then you're not upholding the spirit of the Horde as envisaged by the people that founded it. No matter which you're doing, you're still failing at some objective. It just depends on which one you're failing at. Just depends on how you view your character. So either way, you're not even the guy who just does what he's told anymore. You're there to witness happenings that are happening above your level. Basically, Blizzard is condescending to let you watch their story.
Yeah, I get that. Like, you as Jeff, the NPC, used to be just the really strong guy that Saurfang knew and would ask to do a few things for him. But he would always be the one that comes there and hits the boss with his axe for the last hit or something, as far as Lord Canonicity was concerned, unless we're talking about AQ40, which for some reason a Band of Heroes gets credit for, and is the only raid, I think, where we do. But, yeah, I don't... Even if we were just Jeff, the NPC, the strong guy that Saurfang knows, having conflicting interests like that doesn't make sense for any character when they're that blatant. It just boggles my brain that they would actually write a story that way. Because I've been dodging the story, I don't know the specifics. But yeah, I don't know. As somebody that writes a whole lot of tabletop, I go out of my way in live playtime to dodge conflict of interest by suddenly a character disappears from the scene when the players aren't thinking about it. Like, this is something you avoid at all costs, even in casual writing. So that's a bigger deal, but I don't really have a big jumping off point from it.
Anyway, we'll move on to some news now. Before we
all right,
we're dragging on a bit.
We wowed again. This happens when we wow.
Well, we have to keep persuading ourselves that we aren't going to play anymore.
Yes. Let's see here. Okay. I got the Discord back up. I don't need the email anymore. Thanks for the email, by the way, Serathis. Send us more, and hopefully Fern will read it. Or just not me will read it. Okay, so we have your 4 articles, and I got 2. Mine are fairly small. Do you have any that you particularly want to talk about?
I think some of them are somewhat important. There's a... I don't know if I want to say this is important because it's based on rumors from Kotaku and they won't disclose their sources. But apparently there is an acquisition taking place of Obsidian Entertainment by Microsoft, which is, if that's true, that's pretty big news because Microsoft doesn't have any in-house studios who can write story worth a damn and produce RPGs worth a damn, so... Because, I mean, Destiny 2, that's the best that they've got on offer, really. So if they're bringing in Obsidian, who's made some pretty decent stuff in the past, then that's a fairly significant acquisition.
Yeah, from recent memory, they did Pillars of Eternity, and they did Fallout New Vegas, didn't they?
Yes, I think so. But they've also been in negotiation with various other publishers and so forth, like Take-Two, which they're supposedly working on an RPG for them already.
But yeah,
I'm not sure how much credit to give this whole thing because Kotaku's at the root of it.
Yeah,
but it does. It sounds like something that Microsoft would want to do if they had the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I remember KOTOR 2 and thought it was okay, if a little janky with the systems,
that's
but
the problem. It got rushed to release by their publisher.
But it was still okay for what it was. It wasn't done. And Neverwinter Nights 2 is pretty good from what I remember, although it's been so long I don't really remember much aside from the Mask of the Betrayer stuff. And I don't think Obsidian did those. I think somebody else did the X-Packs for it. But yeah, those are good. Those are good memories. But recently, like, unless you like Pillars of Eternity, I can't think of anything else they've really had their fingers in. Oh, I think they were involved in one of the 2 Butthole games.
The Butthole games? Is that what we're calling them now?
That's what I've been calling them ever since I played the second one.
But yeah, they've been accused of various stuff in the past, like cost padding and whatnot. But they are basically, they're one of the old um, RPG powerhouses. You know, Neverwinter Nights 2, KOTOR, Fallout, Dungeon Siege. Oh, they were on Stick of Truth. Um, oh, they worked on Skyforge as well. At any rate, they are a very RPG centric developer, and the details of the rumor suggest that the advantage for them is that Microsoft will help them become a two-team studio instead of, you know, a one-team studio, which pads their costs. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's sort of hard to say how realistic it is, other than the fact that it's something that I can envisage happening if it could be swung by Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft are denying it, obviously, because you always deny these things when they're not done.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah.
I would be sad to see something get eaten by the Microsoft, but while I praise Pillars of Eternity, it was in the context of two other very similar games at the time. I haven't really thought about it on its own. But compared to Divinity and whatever other one I was poking at the time, it had the best writing of the group. And I do have fond memories of Neverwinter Nights 2 and KOTOR 2, but I can't think of them as a powerhouse nowadays. Like,
Well,
if they get eaten, it would be sad because they made stuff we once upon a time liked, and they still have potential to make good stuff, but
yeah.
they could still make it with Microsoft. It's possible, but historically, whenever Microsoft noms something, the writing division gets thrown out the window.
Well, I mean, we talked about it a little while back. They had issues when a guy left. What's his name? Avalone left, and basically it caused a bit of a controversy because he basically felt that he got screwed by them pretty much, and they tried to silence him, and so on and so forth. It's I'm not really sure what to take from that either, other than the fact that they have had internal trouble of various sorts, often involving finances, and just selling out to Microsoft would sort of alleviate a lot of that because it's going to be managed from above instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can see it happening. Like, I don't know that it's going to happen, and a lot of people will be appalled by it because it's basically a case of the one of the legends of the past selling out. But it sounded to me around the time of the Avalone accusations that they needed somebody who could manage worth a damn to step in and, you know, scrub out the dodgy contracts and the nepotism and all of the other sort of disquiet in the company, because it was a mess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be something that is happening in the background and we just can't see it because, you know, Kotaku rumors are the best we've got to go on. Like, if you've got a rumor, guys, don't take it to Kotaku, please. We can't believe it if they're the ones that report on it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they were the hub before Gamergate where everybody seemed to like going to, so people still go to them on impulse, I guess.
I don't know, like, I had stopped going to them long before Gamergate. I stopped going to them around the time that WoW Radio shut down. How many years ago was that?
2000 and Wrath of the Lich King to Cataclysm. It's easier to think of years and times of WoW expansions.
That's depressing, and I don't want to think about it at all. But
yeah. But yeah, it happened between Wrath and Cata.
yeah, at that point I had started to really, really sour on the Gorka network as a whole. It was actually not Kotaku that was behind it originally, but Gizmodo. Around the first time the first iPad was coming out and Apple was really starting to become a juggernaut that could do as they pleased.
All right.
That period, Gizmodo basically became a advertising arm for Apple.
We're gonna have to tell like kids that would be young enough to be our grandkids that we were around when the first iPad came out, and we can remember it.
And everybody thought that the name was the most ridiculous thing they'd ever heard.
I remember the Photoshop pictures of 4 iPhones duct taped together.
I remember
We're old.
I remember a lot of memes going around about how it was a feminine hygiene product. But yeah. So that's one thing. Next thing, Senran Kagura Burst Renewal. It's a Senran Kagura game. I've talked about them in the past. There is one key fact that you need to know about Senran Kagura games. They're about boobies.
It's a booby game.
It's about boobies. That's what it's about. Now, the reason this is important is because in every Senran Kagura game, there is ample opportunity to poke and prod at the boobies, because that's what the cartoon boobies are there for. They're there to jiggle. Like, that's why they were made. And the guy who developed Senran Kagura has made no bones about this. This is exactly why he does them. Because he likes boobies. And so, there's always a mode where you can manipulate the ladies in question. At the sort of lewd and perverse level, not the pornographic level. Because it's not a porn game. It's just an incredibly perverse game. The reason why this is important is that Sony has refused to let Senran Kagura Burst Renewal be released on their platform for the Western release, unless that content, that what are they calling it, intimacy mode, is removed. And the surprising part is that rather than just not bothering to follow through, Xseed actually capitulated and are delaying the release window in order to edit out that content. Something that neither Steam nor Nintendo are doing.
I mean, it's a booby game. If you buy a booby game, you're playing it because the boobies are in the game.
I think that this is going to be, I think, that could be wrong. This is going to be one of those few occasions where sheer animal impulse is so strong that it will align with the correct market action, and nobody will buy the PlayStation version. Because the boobies are hidden from you. You won't be able to play with the boobies. Like, I think that this might actually work. Like, this is not going to be one of those Modern Warfare 2 boycotts where everybody says they're going to boycott it, but they want to play Modern Warfare, so they buy it and play it anyway. It's not going to be like that. No. Because there's a question now of boobies. Everybody buying Senran Kagura knows exactly what that game is and exactly what that game is for, and Sony doesn't want you to have it.
Yeah.
So this is actually, I view this as, it's a bad thing for PR for Xseed, and it's a bad thing for Sony to show, their particular direction, and I think it's going to be potentially a good thing long term, because if there's one thing that's waking a sleeping giant, it's depriving gamers of boobies when they're trying to buy boobies.
Yeah.
Like, nothing motivates movement like sex, basically. That's what it comes down to. And they've stepped on a tiger's tail now. Like, it's a tragic sort of line of logic that doesn't speak well of the male psyche in general, but it is the single most powerful urge in all of humankind, is man's pursuit of boobies. So, yeah. I mean,
it takes getting burnt pretty hard to get the willpower to tie up that part of yourself that pursues boobies.
Like, I would say you could make a very convincing argument, if you really wanted to, that the pursuit of boobies is the single most powerful force in human history. Because the sheer number of things that men do purely out of the desire for boobies accounts for a pretty hefty proportion of all of the sort of technological advancements, of the wars, of all the weird, wacky, wonderful, and often incredible things that mankind has accomplished, is because there was some man who thought it would impress some woman who had nice boobies.
I am sure we could go into how boobies are the root of everything, and I would probably even agree on a good chunk of them. But we'd be talking about boobies for 30 minutes.
There are various characters in various games who often subscribe to such philosophies, yes. The the crux of this matter is that it is a terrible thing in the short term. Nobody will buy it because it's censored. In the long term, it could have good effects if, you know, people stick with their testicles and vote with their wallets. So, on a personal level, like, I'm a bit conflicted about it because I don't approve of this sort of censorship strong-arming. Like, I think that, you know, overexposure to boobies is bad on a personal level and it's bad on a societal level, but in terms of, you know, the flow of market forces, I think that this is generally a bad thing.
I believe the optimal answer to this would be those that are strong-willed enough and those of us that want to self-censor so we don't consume this content literally 24/7 could have the option to turn the boobies in the booby mode off.
Well, the thing is that what we're doing here is we are removing a particular feature. In the previous Senran Kagura game that I played, it was just part of the wardrobe function that you could, you know, poke at the girl while you were dressing her up, sort of thing. And apparently they've made this mode flourish into its own sort of branch of things. Like, the reality is you don't need to do that at all. Out of sheer curiosity, I pushed through that entire mode and found all of the things, which was, you know, a humongous waste of time. Like, you have to poke and prod them in all sorts of different ways until they get really agitated and basically kick you out. But I did all of that out of curiosity. I don't think I'll ever bother again because it's a huge waste of time. But you don't need to. There's absolutely no reason to whatsoever. You can just not. You don't need to be protected from this. If nobody had explained to me in a FAQ that this was something you could do, I wouldn't have gone and done it. It wouldn't have even occurred to me to do so. But I heard that there was a Chivo for it, so I had to touch them everywhere.
Oh my goodness. So that's what it takes to get you to go for Chivos. But more to the point with it, this isn't like, you know, some VN that's mostly story and has some parts with boobies in it because it's contractually obligated in Japan for all VNs to have boobies at some point that has it removed. This isn't like the censored version of Fate or something, or of Mal. This is a booby game. You're buying the booby game for the boobies. If there's less boobies in one version, you will not buy that version.
There's not even any nudity in this game. Like, well, there's no nipples or genitals shown or anything like that. Like, this game is sort of like, I don't know what rating that is. It's salacious, it's lewd, it's perverted, but it's not porn.
It's definitely M-rated in the US, but it's not AO. Yeah. But
it just seems like this is Sony overplaying their hand, and they really shouldn't. When Nintendo is less censorious than you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, the people that are buying this game know what they're buying. Let them buy what they're buying. You don't need to protect the people that are going to buy the Senran Kagura game.
Yeah, they know what they're buying. They know exactly what they're buying and why they're buying it. I mean, I might be a bit of an unusual case in that I bought it not for boobies specifically, but because it was a Muso game with cute anime girls, which wasn't, you know, necessarily, my intentions were not necessarily booby centric, but boobies didn't hurt. But yeah, generally speaking, people who are long-running fans of the series, the ones that people are counting on to, the developers counting on to buy this, they all know what they're after. And Sony is going to get burned by this, and it serves them right. This is like the censorship of the self is where all censorship should take place. Period. End. This was the Stoic philosophy from centuries gone by. Like the way the classics did it, the way the early Christians did it, the way the Jews did it. Self-censorship. Your morality is self-contained. If you think that it is going to do you harm to participate at great length in boobies, I guess, then you control that on your own authority. You don't need some corporate overlord to do it for you.
That's what I was building towards before the fact that it's wrapped up and we're talking about a booby game. That I just got distracted. That's what I was trying to get at earlier.
It's rather hypnotic.
Well, I have the boobies off the screen and I'm looking at the text, so I can't see them.
I don't have
in
any
the
boobies
article.
on the screen at all. They did see me. Anybody who watched the stream would have seen me playing Saber Venus briefly earlier, which I normally avoid, but picked it on a whim because Saber Venus has the most stripperific outfit ever of all time, in all Fate. Like, it's comically stripperific. So, yeah, there was a certain amount of boobies on the stream, but for some reason, I always go a bit hog wild every time we get the opportunity to discuss boobies, possibly because I almost never think about that sort of thing outside it. But yeah, so Senran Kagura is going to be ground zero for the next big censorship battle, and it is so raw that I think that it's going to provoke a response that you don't normally get. What I would contextualize this against is something like a JRPG, which had a lot of boobies in it, let's say. If that got censored, it wouldn't impact a large number of people who didn't know that it had been censored and wouldn't be able to tell.
Unless they tie hidden items to that mode in that RPG or strategy game called Fire Emblem that you can't get, and you now have to super grind in the hard part of the game when you have the self-resing turned off. Cough, cough.
Not salty? Not salty at all?
Do you know how many hours I had to find to circumvent that stuff?
At any rate, this is a situation where they are not banning some incidental thing that appears, oh, a character has a slightly scanty outfit at this one point. They're not censoring that. They are censoring the whole reason that people play this game. That's like removing all the Pokemon from a Pokemon game.
I don't know. I think it's even stupider than that. It's like you've got a big wedding cake covered in vanilla frosting that's like 3 layers deep, and you just take the top layer off. There's still boobies there. People are still buying this thing for the boobies. There's just less boobies.
So there's no reason. This isn't made. This is
like,
it's doomed to failure, and I am interested to see how it will go. The problem is they might learn the wrong lesson.
It's totally nonsensical.
The problem is them learning the wrong lesson. If they learn this, if they interpret this lesson as in, oh well, we should never let them put the games on our platform anymore, then that's a problem. But hopefully they will learn their lesson. They've heavy-handedly come in and said this. Xseed has capitulated for goodness only knows what reason. Sony must have them by the testicles or something. It doesn't make any sense that they would capitulate in this sort of a dramatic fashion.
I'm pretty sure he's got a pretty good handle on what his testicles want.
Yeah, well, at any rate, I want to see how this goes from here. I'm not mad the way other people are because I never intended to buy the game to begin with, but
it depends on Xseed's response after they reveal their sales numbers, if they do.
Yeah, if they're not, it's not going to be pretty. I tell you what, nobody's going to buy the censored version of a game that is all about being salacious. That's like going out and buying censored porn. Like, to what end? You could have just got the uncensored one.
For you, the consumer, there is more booby for your buck on PC. That's what you need to know.
Yeah. Or on, as far as I am aware, on Nintendo. That's the part that I can't believe. But then I hear Nintendo did put Neko Para on there. On the new
they've
console
loosened
as
up
well.
on their... I've heard they've loosened up quite a bit on their restrictions.
Putting Catgirl hentai on their system is not loosening up restrictions. That is removing them entirely.
Oh right, that's that type of game, isn't it?
Yes. Anyway, moving on. Where's something else? I'm not really interested in any of those other ones. You have anything you want to talk about?
No. Hang on.
We just spent like 15 minutes talking about boobies. You've got to have something.
This is you're talking to the guy that goes out of his way to find censored patches for VNs. So
well, you
talking
have
about the movie game
because
is
if you don't, you'll see something cringy.
I know.
It's always horrible.
Yes. So yes, it shakes me a little bit when they get brought up intentionally. Okay. So we'll do the do-to-dos, I guess. The do-to-dos. You may be able to change your PSN name coming up pretty soon, which has been a thing people have asked for what? When PSN come out?
Ever. They were probably asking before it came out. My goodness. Like,
you've already...
everybody wants to go through life as XX Darkforge XX.
Yeah, that's for when you're 13. Literally 13, by the way. And No, and later on you pick a real name at some point. About the age 16 to 18 is when people settle on a name they usually stick with. That is not some compound word or some some XX name or some stylized name or some clan tag name. They usually settle on a proper internet handle about that age. And if you were younger, you don't have that on PSN.
Yeah, so they've announced a service to allow you to change your PSN Online ID. It would not surprise me if it is actually a huge pain in the butt for them to change them, but whether it is or not, people really, really badly want it. So
yeah.
they will allow you to change them for free one time. So make your decision carefully. After that, you can change them at a fee, $10 or $5 for PS Plus users.
Which that's reasonable as long as there's a free change first to get, you know, the people named compound word with style on either side of the name of their choosing. Like, get the stylizations gone, get the compound word gone, as long as people can just use their dang name now.
Well, the thing is, in addition to that, it's not necessarily compatible with every game, and this is the part that makes me think it's legit spaghetti code that's made that a huge problem in the past. So most of the heavily played games will be compatible with it, and everything that has been published after April 1st, which suggests that April 1st was when they finalised that they were definitely releasing this service. Everything published after April 1st this year will definitely be compatible with the name change system, but there may be stuff before that on older titles and whatnot, which were tied into the PSN name system. So that could cause some unforeseen problems, particularly with things like trophy data and maybe old saves and that sort of thing. But some people just want to put XX Start Forge XX behind them.
Very much so. But yeah. Okay, yeah. So you can maybe change your PSN name coming up. I'm trying to rush through this because we're way over time. But yeah. So somebody at EA had a stroke of, oh wait, we're about to lose all of our consumers that buy Command & Conquer. So they have decided it would probably be a good idea to make this few classic CNC games get some remasters. We don't know what they are yet. The announcement post doesn't know what they are yet, but it's probably happening. Somebody has said that it's a thing they want to do, and they have support for it at the company. I don't know if it's in development, but apparently the dude that's in charge, that was in the lead producer on Command & Conquer 3, and one of the other ones, I forget, one of the more recent ones, one of the Red Alerts, I think, Red Alert 3, he's like, okay, I'm leading a project, and we're going to try to make remaster some older Command & Conquer games. He didn't mention which ones, though, so when he said classic Command & Conquer games, he could mean Generals in the Red Alert series, he could mean Tiberium Wars 3, or whatever. Like, it could go even further back than that. Like, we don't know. What you say is classic Command & Conquer is kind of nebulous at this point because the franchise is so dang old, it could be just about anything, and it's been forever since we got a game. So, all hope may not be lost. It probably is. I wouldn't get your hopes up over this, but it's the thing that's happening. This is reeks of a last-ditch attempt to save the fans that have just completely jumped ship with the mobile thing. Peggle.
I'm still here. I'm just trying to determine if we're still streaming or not. But my browser's crashed, so oh no, I think it's unsticking now.
Okay, I will. Nope, that is the wrong link.
Determine if we're still streaming.
I'll attempt to find it,
but my browser's crashed. Still
okay,
working. That's nice to know. It's nice to know.
Yes. So yeah, we may get CNC remasters, which would be cool. If they're good, we'll talk about them then. If they're bad, we'll probably also talk about them then. That was the do-to-dos I had. They were fairly small. When we actually started this show, I wasn't here last week. So in our hidden channel where we post all the news on the Discord, I had saw that Fern posted a bunch of stuff, and I didn't know he wasn't going to be there until later tonight. So I saw all this stuff. I'm like, oh, Fern's got plenty of stuff. Okay, I'll just keep my notes to myself, and we'll go through them when we get to the show and pick out anything else that we might need. And Vol gets on. He's like, "That's from last week." I'm like, I look at the date, and I'm like, "Uh oh."
Anyway,
So that's
we prattled on about plenty of other things, so
yeah. Do you have anything else in yours that you
I don't.
particularly think is a big deal?
I don't. I don't have anything else that I especially want to talk about at this particular instance.
Yeah. Okay. So, email topic of the week. You're not getting one because the obvious one is not going to be good for my health. Don't write me about the booby games. I really don't like talking about the booby games. I'll make the one-off joke, and that's already too much.
I take the opportunity to just say boobies as often as possible whenever we're discussing them, because I never say it under normal conditions.
I don't know. It's especially stuck in my brain because it was a female friend that just shouted at me when she saw the Devil May Cry trailer and saw Trish and Lady, and she goes, "Where's the boobies at?" It's been stuck in my head since then that she said that.
Yeah, for me, it's a combination of Taukaka and there's a pair of characters in the first Neptunia game who basically they based their allegiance to their goddess based entirely on whichever character has the most impressive boobies at any point in time.
Yeah. Taukaka's my fallback too. Whenever they do come to mind, which is not super common, it's like, oh, I imagine Taukaka yelling at Lychee over something. It's the first thing that comes to my head whenever boobies reach conversation level.
Right. Okay. So we've had now a secondary parasite conversation about boobies. It might be time to close out the show.
Yeah. I'm trying to see how much they can both derail us and keep us on topic. Okay. So, closing comments go. This has been a long show. Fern, come back. We need you.
Yeah. Fern is responsible for all of the boobies. Like, you wouldn't have had this particular conversation in the form that it exists today without Fern's absence. So if you don't want to hear us giggling about boobies for the back half of the show, you need to get Fern to come back.
Yes. Tell Fern you love him so that he loves us more than his family. There's a reason we needed a mediator, and this is why. There's a great many reasons we've gone over why we need Fern over the times we've done shows without Fern, and they become more apparent and clear every single time. All right, folks. I think we're done for the week. We'll see y'all next week with a normal show with a Fern who will keep us on track. Sayonara, bye-bye.